Han Li's Wuxia Adventures. Chapter 2853. Kai Xiu's injuries were all on her face, and the burns were very serious. But since the young crown princess said it could be cured, then it definitely could be cured. Huifeng had this kind of blind confidence in his young crown princess. Kai Chi, who had been taking care of Kai Xiu, also sighed in relief when she heard this. She quickly got up and knelt down in front of the young crown princess. "Many thanks, crown princess." "Many thanks, crown princess." "Get up," Arbor expressionlessly said from her seat. Kai Chi got up and nervously twisted the handkerchief in her hand. "Your crown princess, when Kai Xiu received this letter that day, she left the Eastern Palace and came to Kaidai Veranda. She said that she had something important to inform shopkeeper Hu." When Arbor took the letter, she repeatedly touched the paper. She abruptly grabbed Kai Chi's hand and slowly put it down with a frown. She took out a porcelain bottle from her inner world and handed it to Kai Chi. "Who else came into contact with this letter besides you?" Kai Chi's heart sank with a thump. "Tea shopkeeper Hu and a worker also read it." Arbor rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. "Call them in." She paused for a moment, then took out a few more bottles of pills from her inner world. "Forget it. Go and give them to everyone in Kaidai Pavilion. Tell them to take one each." Kai Chi's heart thumped wildly, and she asked in a trembling voice, But there's something wrong with this letter." Arbor nodded. "Once the poison enters the body, anyone below the spiritual realm will silently die within 3 days. Everyone in Kaidai Veranda was an ordinary mystic realm cultivator. Most of them were still normal people, so they naturally couldn't resist this kind of poison." Kai Chi was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Who exactly is it that wants to make life difficult for the entire Kaidai Veranda? Arbor was silent for a long time before she said indifferently, "They want to make life difficult for me." However, Huifeng thought of another question. "Crown Princess, can this poison be transmitted through the human body?" From yesterday until now, the workers in Kaidai Veranda should have come into contact with many outsiders. Arbor shook his head. "It's not that magical. The poison is attached to the paper. It has to be touched by the skin to enter the body. After it enters the human body, it travels through the meridians and accumulates in the heart at a very fast speed. Therefore, if it's quick, it'll take 1 day, and if it's slow, it'll take 3 days. I've lost this round," Arbor said calmly. Until now, she still did not know who was the one who set fire to Kaidai Pavilion and ordered the Zhang family to take the lead. Her own subordinate, Kai Xiu, had been severely injured by the fire. Although she could be saved, she still had to suffer a lot. The letter was written in Arbor's own handwriting, stating that he had accidentally learned that a mob had gathered to cause trouble at the Kaidai Pavilion. He told Kai Xiu to immediately go to the Kaidai Pavilion and discuss countermeasures with the shopkeeper. If something happened to Kai Xiu, she was to take the Eastern Palace token and go to the capital office. It was written really well. No wonder Kai Xiu fell for it. If the mastermind behind the scenes was able to pull this off first, the Kaidai Pavilion's poor management would cause the mob to attack and cause its reputation to plummet. At the same time, the little crown princess's reputation would also plummet. Second, the Kaidai Pavilion's shopkeeper and workers would suddenly die within 3 days after coming into contact with the letter. Third, an even bigger rumor was very likely waiting for them at this moment. For example, the Kaidai Pavilion's dishes were unclean, and even their shopkeeper and workers had died without knowing why. Another example was that the little crown princess was a natural jinx and a star of misfortune. Chapter 2854. Kaidai Veranda had always been well managed by the Mu family, but as soon as the little crown princess took it back, it had to face the consequences of poor management and bankruptcy. Perhaps by the time she returned from the academy, the legend of her being the source of disaster would be spreading through the entire capital again. This kind of method really seemed to be the work of her old rival. That old rival who didn't let her have an easy time skillfully and thoughtfully laid out this scheme. If she hadn't suddenly appeared and rushed back, perhaps all of this really would have developed uncontrollably according to that person's scheme. Arbor pursed her lips and reflexively clenched her fists, stubbornly controlling the overwhelming emotions in her heart. If that old rival was right in front of her right now, she probably would have uncontrollably torn him to shreds. Arbor took a deep breath and looked down at Kai Xiu, who was lying on the bed with her eyes tightly shut. After instructing someone to bring in water, Arbor skillfully removed the layers of cloth wrapping around Kai Xiu's face. She first carefully cleaned her wounds before applying ointment on them. Afterwards, she stood up and instructed Kai Chi, who was standing to the side, the wounds on her face will hurt and itch for the next 2 days. When she wakes up, you can't let her scratch at the wounds. Watch her carefully. She'll gradually recover after applying this ointment for 3 days. At that time, the numbness and itchiness will gradually disappear. Yes, Crown Princess. This servant will definitely watch over her carefully. Arbor handed a bottle of pills to her. If she really can't take the pain anymore, let her take one. Yes. Arbor pursed her lips and walked out of the room with a taut expression. When the door to the side room slammed shut, she looked up at the sky under the setting sun, her eyes so heavy that they looked like they could drip water. This person went to great lengths to set a trap for her, scheming to smear the Kaidai veranda's reputation. She truly put in a lot of effort. She reached out to rub her aching head. She vaguely thought of something in her mind, but it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Since she couldn't think of it, then she wouldn't think about it. Kai Xiu couldn't really move due to her injuries, so Arbor had Kai Chi stay behind to take care of her while she led Hui Feng, Li Yi, and the others back to the Eastern Palace. As night approached, Hui Feng came to report with a slightly unsightly expression. He said that the 8 members of the Zhang clan who had been imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice's prison had all suddenly died. Arbor was so angry that he smashed the teacup on the ground. Zhao Tingdong, Eunuch Chen, Aunt Jing, and the others didn't even dare to breathe loudly as they lowered their heads. Good, good. Very good. Arbor repeatedly muttered, his eyes shining with a fierce light. She felt as if she had missed something. It turned out that the poison that could cause sudden death was indeed set up by the Zhang family. This old opponent of hers was still as ruthless and swift as ever, causing her to suffer an imperceptible defeat once again. Although the Zhang family was despicable, they wouldn't go so far as to kill their entire family. Being imprisoned was just to teach the greedy Zhang family a lesson they would never forget. Now the lesson of the greedy Zhang family was truly long-lasting. Their entire family's lives were paid for it. Is there anyone left in the Zhang family? At the same time this subordinate received the news, old Madame Zhang's only remaining grandson has already gone to the capital magistrate's office to sue the crown princess. Eunuch Chen couldn't help but say angrily, what's he suing the crown princess for? Even if his entire family died in prison, shouldn't he be suing the Ministry of Justice for their lack of supervision? The end. Chapter 28:55. Arbor pursed her lips. Although she was very unhappy, she quickly calmed down, prepare the carriage, we're going to the capital office. Crown Princess, you're in the eye of the storm right now. Do you really want to go to the capital office? Aunt Jing hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Arbor nodded, let's go. Everyone couldn't persuade her. Taking advantage of the night, they boarded the carriage and accompanied Arbor to the capital office. Hearing that the crown princess had arrived, Chao Jieto hurriedly brought Wu Xiaoyin to welcome her. He invited her into the inner hall and offered her tea. After a short while, he led a long-faced man in his 20s over. That man was wearing a brown robe. His clothes were very simple. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes. Seeing the little crown princess sitting on the armchair, he didn't panic. He only raised his eyes and bowed, this commoner Zhang Enjie greets the crown princess. Arbor put down the teacup in her hand and nodded at him. You came to the capital office in the middle of the night and beat the drum to accuse me. This matter is now known by all. Zhang Yinjie lowered his eyes and obediently knelt in front of Arbor. Arbor didn't let him get up. He also didn't get up. He only knelt there with his back ramrod straight. Where's the complaint? Chao Jiedo only felt that the complaint was very hot. He took it and handed it to the little crown princess, then silently retreated to the side. The little crown princess silently read for a minute. Then, with a "pa" sound, she slapped the complaint on the table beside her. The entire inner hall was silent. Chao Jiedo and several other officials felt a heavy pressure in their hearts. The little girl was very young, but her aura was very strong. You've read books. This complaint is written clearly and with great emotion. It's really not bad. Arbor said coldly. Her sharp gaze fell on Zhang Yinjie. But in your complaint, you say that this crown princess ordered the Ministry of Justice to punish the 8 members of the Zhang family. What basis do you have? Based on your own far-fetched conjecture. Zhang Yinjie suddenly raised his head. When I went to the prison to visit, the people in the Ministry of Justice's prison didn't allow me to get close at all. If you're not guilty, then what is it? Arbor looked at the man coldly. You're Zhang Yinjie. Yes. Why didn't you come today? I'm sorry to disappoint the crown princess. Zhang Yinjie retorted indifferently. This commoner disapproved of grandmother and father coming to Kaidai brothel to cause trouble from the very beginning. Arbor looked at him deeply. Come with me. I'll have to trouble Lord Chao to accompany me. Crown princess's words are too serious. Chao Jiedo was overwhelmed by the favor and said. This is this official's responsibility. Crown princess, please, please. Thus, Chao Jiedo and Wu Shaoyin accompanied Arbor's group to the Ministry of Justice's prison. When Assistant Minister Zhou received the news that the 8 members of the Zhang family had died, he knew that the situation was not good. He immediately reported the matter to his superior, Minister Fang. Now that he knew that the Crown Princess's group had arrived, Minister Fang led Assistant Minister Zhou to the main entrance to welcome them and led them to the prison. Assistant Minister Zhou had long expected that someone would come to investigate the prison after such a big incident. Thus, he had ordered the jailers to tidy up the prison. Those frightening torture instruments were all put away. When they walked into the prison, they saw that it was still clean. Crown Princess, this way please. Assistant Minister Zhou ordered the jailers to lead the way and led the group to the prison where the Zhang family had previously stayed. Chapter 28:56. Looking through the thick and round wooden fence, the 8 corpses were still neatly placed there. It looked like they had been tidied up and were still clean. Zhang Yinjie's fingers clenched tightly as he subconsciously arched his back. His eyes stared intently at the 8 corpses in the cell. Although his grandmother and father were greedy, they were still his closest family. Now that he had reached this point, he felt very bad. He especially regretted leaving them at noon and climbing the mountain alone to relax. He should have tried his best to stop it. Even if he couldn't stop it, he should have followed and interceded for them. Arbor ordered someone to open the cell door and walked inside. The thin Minister Fang hurriedly stopped her. Crown Princess, it's too dirty inside. Why don't you get someone to carry them outside? No need. Arbor waved her hand expressionlessly and walked in quickly. Slowly wrapping a cloth around her hands, Arbor squatted down and looked at the 8 corpses one by one. Then she stood up. It's the same poison as Mr. Zhang and Squire Li. What do you mean? Zhang Yinjie was shocked. He couldn't help but look straight at the little crown princess. You're a smart person. You should know. Arbor said indifferently, your grandmother and father were ordered by someone to come to Kaidai Loft to cause trouble. They were exposed and locked up in prison. You can see now that the wounds on their bodies are not fatal. Xiao Mu sneered as she pointed at the rod and whip wounds of varying depths on the 8 members of the Zhang clan. It's a fatal poison that took their lives. Zhang Enjie's breath stopped slightly. Crown Princess. What evidence do you have for saying that? Xiao Mu swiped her hand, and she saw a small, ordinary sparrow hopping in her hand. Her other hand took out a silver needle and pressed it against the little sparrow. She gently pricked its little claw and said expressionlessly, "This silver needle is not poisonous." Zhang Enjie could not help but look embarrassed. He nodded and said, "This commoner naturally believes that the high and mighty Crown Princess would definitely not deceive commoners like us. I'm going to extract some poison from your grandmother's body." Arbor ignored him and said coldly. She inserted the silver needle into the old woman's heart. When he took out the silver needles, everyone leaned over to take a look, but they didn't find anything strange. The silver needle was still an ordinary silver needle, and it didn't turn black after encountering the poison. The little Crown Princess gently pressed down on the little bird with one hand and once again pierced the silver needle into its little claw. This poison entered your grandmother's body and flowed through her meridians toward her heart. The poison that has accumulated in the heart can be said to be the essence of the poison. A person this big will die in at least a day or 3 days. Therefore, this poison essence will take effect in less than 15 minutes in the body of such a small sparrow. She placed the little sparrow on the ground. At first, the little sparrow happily jumped a few times on the ground, but in less than a few minutes, its body tilted to the ground and it let out a weak cry. Its claws struggled a few times before its movements gradually slowed down. Arbor quickly stepped forward and picked up the little sparrow and dripped 2 drops of medicine into its mouth. Not long after, the little thing stretched its little wings and slowly recovered. Chapter 28:57. Although he still looked dispirited, at least his life was saved. The little stoic straightened up and turned to look at them. Her gaze landed on Zhang Enjie's face. "If you still feel suspicious, you can find someone to test this poison. Don't say that I lied to you." When everyone present heard this, they all took a step back in unison, leaving Zhang Enjie standing alone in front of the Crown Prince Consort with a bewildered expression. The little Crown Princess looked at him with a stoic expression. She frowned and raised the silver needle that was tainted with poison in her hand. "So it turns out you want to personally experience this poison. That's fine too." Zhang Enjie hastily retreated, but Minister Fong and his group of troublemakers retreated even faster than him. They all retreated out of the prison cell and even closed the door on their way out. They left him alone in the same prison cell as the little Crown Princess, this extremely dangerous person. Zhang Enjie was a bit stupefied. He turned to look at Minister Fong and his group, who had calm and innocent expressions, through the prison door. "Doesn't your conscience hurt by doing this?" The little Crown Princess held a needle in her hand and walked toward him step by step. "Don't worry. Although the treatment is a bit troublesome, it will definitely save you." Zhang Enjie's expression changed again and again, and he kept retreating while repeatedly saying, Don't, Crown Princess. This commoner believes you. Please don't insert needles." It wasn't like he was sick and had to personally experience the potency of this poison. He had already seen clearly what the little bird had gone through. There was no need for him to experience it himself. The little stoic said expressionlessly with a sour expression, "Weren't you looking at me with a suspicious gaze from start to finish?" No. Absolutely not." Zhang Enjie hastily waved his hand. As the wife of the heir apparent of the divine province, the Crown Princess naturally wouldn't deceive a commoner like me. When the little Crown Princess withdrew the poison needle in her hand, Zhang Enjie's eyelid twitched. "You! That needle!" She kept the poison needle in her hand. If she was careless and pricked herself, wouldn't she be in big trouble? This action seemed to be very dangerous. The little stoic glanced at him indifferently. "It can't hurt me. You, on the other hand." She looked at him and asked indifferently, "Do you want to know who the mastermind behind the death of your family is?" "Yes." Zhang Yinjie nodded heavily. "Then you can stay and help out at Kaidai Pavilion." Arbor glanced at him. "Until we catch the mastermind and find out who killed the 8 members of your Zhang family." Zhang Yinjie couldn't help being stunned. Crown Prince Consort, they wanted to hire him to work for Kaidai Pavilion? That's exactly what you think. The little stoic coldly swept him a glance. Your handwriting isn't bad. In the future, stay at Kaidai restaurant and help write recipes. When the people outside the cell heard this, they couldn't help but stagger and almost fall to the ground. Their dear Crown Princess. How could this little person be so comical? You came to accuse me without evidence and caused a bit of damage to my reputation, so I'll deduct half a year's worth of your salary. Zhang Yinjie, what happened? Why was his salary deducted for half a year before he even started work for no reason? After half a year, I'll give you a salary of 1,000 spirit coins per month. You'll get more money if you do well, and scram if you don't. Chapter 2858. Zhang Yinjie looked at the young crown princess in front of him with an odd expression. Outside the prison cell, Minister Fong and his group had long been unable to look straight at him. For some reason, they actually started to sympathize with Zhang Yinjie, this hothead, from the bottom of their hearts. It's the funeral of the 8 members of the Zhang family. Minister Fong hastily said, "This humble official has already submitted a memorial to His Majesty regarding this matter. His Majesty has clearly stated that this family should be properly buried. Oh, then the royal court will pay for the funeral expenses, right?" The little stoic muttered before turning to say to Zhang Yinjie, "Once you're done, I'll give you 10 days off. If there's nothing else, come back to work earlier." The 10 days of leave I gave Zhang Yinjie are equivalent to 500 spirit coins a day. The royal court will compensate me with this money. Everyone collapsed to the ground in shock. Aren't you stingy? Not only did you make Zhang Yinjie work for free for half a year, you even gave him 10 days off and wanted the royal court to compensate you. Speaking of which, you only gave Zhang Yinjie a monthly stipend of 1,000, but when you asked the royal court for compensation, it became 500 a day. Where exactly did this weirdo come from? How did the emperor end up with a daughter-in-law like you? Is there a problem? When the little stoic saw Minister Fong and the others twitching their eyebrows and eyes, she couldn't help but ask. Minister Fong rolled his eyes, and Assistant Minister Zhou hastily walked up behind him and secretly poked him in the waist. Minister Fong adjusted his expression and coughed lightly, saying, "Crown Princess, there's no problem. This humble official will draft a memorial to this matter and present it to His Majesty." The young crown princess nodded calmly in the midst of chaos. He got off easy. Who got off easy? Everyone speechlessly asked the heavens. You think that the emperor got off easy, right? You only asked for 5,000 in compensation because you think it's too little, right? Minister Fong and the others followed the young crown princess out of the prison in a daze, pondering a very strange question the entire time. Why didn't one of the crown princess workers come to work and insist on asking the emperor for compensation? Meanwhile, Zhang Yinjie was also pondering a serious question. Why was he in such a rush to work for the little crown princess? And why was his allowance for half a year deducted for no reason? Why did it feel like the little crown princess didn't lose anything after this matter was settled? She even gained a cheap helper that night. Minister Fong wrote the memorial and presented it to His Majesty the next day. The memorial was written with great emotion, praising the crown princess from head to toe, saying that she was smart and talented, that she could solve cases like a god, and that she was able to determine the cause of death of 8 people with a single silver needle. The censorate Darren followed Minister Fong and Assistant Minister Zhou's group in praising the young crown prince consort. The great emperor couldn't help but laugh. Yesterday, when he received the news that Zhang Jiazi had gone to the capital office to sue the crown princess, he had been secretly happy for a while. He thought that he would most likely receive many impeachment memorials from the courtiers today. Finally, he had an excuse to bring his youngest daughter-in-law in front of him and give her a good scolding. He wanted to vent the anger and frustration that he had suffered since meeting the young crown princess. He didn't expect that during the court session today, these old fellows acted as if nothing had happened. Not a single one of them mentioned the crown princess, not to mention the impeachment memorials. There was no such thing at all. Right now, Minister Fong's memorial was actually singing the praises of the young crown prince consort. This group of cunning fellows must think that the young crown princess was a tough nut to crack, so they didn't dare to do anything. A group of bastards who changed their rudder according to the wind. Wait. Chapter 28:59. In the end, Minister Fong's memorial eulogized the Zhang family, and he even proposed that the imperial court compensate the Zhang family with funeral expenses. Alright, that was fine. After all, the person died in the Ministry of Justice's prison, and the imperial court had to shoulder this inexplicable blame. So be it if there were funeral expenses. But the problem was that Minister Fong mentioned the final 5,000 spirit coins as a delayed labor fee. What was this? The imperial court had to pay for this? When Mo Lusheng heard about this baffling compensation of 5,000 spirit coins, he couldn't help but laugh in exasperation. Although the officials below didn't dare to say anything, the faces of Prince Kong, the Prince of Jianping, and the others standing in the front row were clearly twitching, and they were secretly suppressing their laughter. The princes were mostly rejoicing in other people's misfortune, right? Mo Lusheng swept a glance at Prince Kong. Stop pretending, you almost can't suppress the smile on your lips. Mo Lusheng felt that if this little stoic was in front of him right now, perhaps he would personally beat her up. The emperor of the divine province expressionlessly looked at Minister Fong. Fong Hongliang's heart was like a small boat floating in a small river, sinking and sinking, about to sink to the bottom of the water. Then, he heard the emperor icily mutter, approved. Fong Hongliang hurriedly breathed a sigh of relief. The emperor's handsome face was cold as he said word by word, have the crown prince consort scram back to the Royal Academy before noon. Don't be so dispirited and lazy after only 2 days of classes. Everyone silently hung their heads, and their mouths twitched one after another. How sullen was our emperor in his heart that he didn't even want to see the little crown princess's face. He only wanted her to scram far, far away, and it was best if she didn't return for the time being. After everyone retreated from the royal court, they couldn't help but wipe away their sweat. The emperor always suffered a setback in front of the young couple. If this continued, who knew if he would get sick from holding it in? Achoo! Far away in the Royal Academy, Mo Lien looked up at the bit of dawn that peeked out from the east and pursed her lips with a sigh. Why wasn't his wifey back yet? Good morning, Crown Prince. Little Fatty was sweating all the way as he ran over from the backyard. He flashed 2 rows of white teeth at Prince Mo. Morning. Mo Lien nodded and looked at the little fatty and asked, when did you come back last night? The little fatty's hand that was wiping his sweat froze slightly. He turned his head mechanically and looked at the crown prince guiltily. Ah! What is it? The crown prince snorted. Why do you think that fellow doesn't even have a single guard by his side? Little fatty's mouth twitched, and his expression was one of sudden realization. He hurried to the crown prince's side and asked in a low voice, Your Highness, you did it? Do I look like such a boring person? Mo Lien haughtily glanced at him before turning around to walk outside. Today, the instructor from the weapon refining hall wanted them to head over early. After yesterday's lecture on theory, they would probably have to personally make a storage cabinet today. The Wind Thunder City was so big that storage cabinets were indispensable. The storage cabinets in the entire Wind Thunder City were basically made by the students of the Royal Academy's refining hall. Although storage cabinets were useful, they were difficult to make and the process was extremely long. Therefore, it was really the most difficult practical course to pass in the refining hall. Because the storage space of each storage cabinet was different from the amount of magnetite required to be consumed, every storage item that required more than 10 magnetite was a defective product. After all, the storage cabinet could only be fixed in one place, and it wasn't very convenient to store items. Chapter 2860. If each storage cost more than 10 pieces of magnetite, then they really couldn't afford it. In addition, now that they were all using spirit coins, the blacksmiths were required to keep up with the times and improve their own storage cabinets. In yesterday's theory class, they were required to use spirit coins to replace magnetite storage during the process of making the storage cabinets. Of course, the consumption of spirit coins had to be controlled within 5 spirit coins. If the price was too high, the commoners in the city would definitely not be able to afford it. Today's task was to make this storage cabinet. Of course, it was impossible for most people to make a storage cabinet in a day. His Highness the Crown Prince missed his wife and was somewhat absent-minded. During the practical class, the crafting furnace and spirit fire that everyone used were all provided by the academy. Soon, the absent-minded Crown Prince caused a stir in the weapon refining hall on the way to the cafeteria at noon. All the students of the Divine Prefecture branch were talking about their Crown Prince's miraculous feat of casually making a storage cabinet in half an hour. Everyone said, His Highness is too miraculous. Even the students of the weapon refining hall felt a sense of pride. It is indeed miraculous. The teachers gave us 2 days. I didn't expect that His Highness the Crown Prince would only need half an hour to make such a perfect storage cabinet. Not to mention the tens of thousands of times of storage, each storage only costs 1 spirit coin. If this storage cabinet is placed in the city, it will definitely be very convenient for everyone. Yes, yes. I heard that Principal Yun personally talked to His Highness the Crown Prince about this. He probably wants His Highness to make a few more storage cabinets so that the school can buy them. His Highness doesn't lack money. That's right. He's just doing it for fun. Someone immediately revealed the truth. Countless people beat their chests and stamped their feet. They kept shouting in their hearts, God is too unfair. Why did it have to be given to the person who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth who had such high intelligence and skills? This matter spread throughout the entire imperial school. Not only was the entire Divine Prefecture branch shocked, even the Underworld and Sangzhou branches were shocked. A portion of the people from Sangzhou and Underworld didn't know Mo Lian yet, so they were eager to make friends with His Highness who had extraordinary refining skills. Students who were used to eating lunch usually went to the royal school's cafeteria to settle their lunch. Today, the hall was especially full. Everyone, regardless of whether they were here to eat or not, wanted to see the Crown Prince. When Mo Lian and Duan Yu walked in side by side, they saw several hundred to 1,000 pairs of eyes simultaneously turning to look at them. Everyone was dazzled by the two of them, and then there were all kinds of love-struck screams. Little Fatty and Qi Xian hurriedly rushed to the front and blocked the crowd who wanted to surround them. They used their hands to block them. What are you doing? What are you guys doing? Step back and don't come any closer. I'm warning you, whoever takes another step forward, be careful of my fist. What a joke. Without Jojo around, the heavy responsibility of protecting His Highness would fall on their shoulders. They absolutely could not allow any female creature to take advantage of Jojo's absence to approach His Highness. Prince Lian. Suddenly, a person shouted and squeezed through the crowd with all his might, pouncing over to hug Mo Lian's leg. How could Mo Lian let him hug her? She quickly dodged back, causing him to miss. The 6th watch ended. Chapter 2861. Everyone's mouths involuntarily twitched when they took a closer look. Not only did the lunging student have an unshaven beard, but his greasy hair also drooped on his head. From his appearance, he looked like a large dog that had wandered outside for many years. Duan Yu took a step back and glanced at Prince Mo with a spurious smile. He teased, "Oh, Your Highness Lotus, could this be one of your family's lost brothers?" The Mo family produced talented people. No matter how unsightly someone like Mo Kun was, he didn't seem to have such a terrible appearance as this fellow in front of them. "Your Highness, my name is Xing Tianyang. I would like to enter Your Highness' tutelage, please accept me as your disciple." This fellow dropped to his knees with a plop, looking like he had suffered a great grievance. His words made people spit out laughter. "You want to get close to us with this appearance of yours?" The little fatty abruptly stopped midway through his tirade. His eyes widened, and he couldn't resist exclaiming, "What? You want to take Her Highness Lotus as your master?" Was this punk here to make fun of them? Judging from his age, this punk was probably in his 30s, right? Mo Lien glanced at Xing Tianyang exasperatedly. "Don't block the way. What kind of joke was this?" He didn't want to accept such a greasy disciple. Right, don't block the way." Everyone repeatedly shouted for Xing Tianyang to move aside. The group was all blocked at the entrance. Xing Tianyang crawled over and wanted to hug Mo Lien's thigh again. "Your Highness. I beg you to take me in. Take me in, Your Highness. Your Highness. Take me in." Everyone looked up at the sky speechlessly. This Xing Tianyang couldn't have a hole in his head, right? With his stinky appearance, whoever took him in would be unlucky. If they took this fellow in, wouldn't they pass out from his stench every day? Duan Yu lowered his head, unable to suppress the smile on his lips. "Since Xing Tianyang is so sincere, why don't you take him in?" Xing Tianyang cast a grateful glance at Duan Yu. Mo Lien cast a glance at Duan Yu before chuckling and thanking his family. She then strode past Xing Tianyang. Seeing this, Xing Tianyang hurriedly got up and ran a few steps, chasing after Mo Lien and shouting, "Your Highness Lien, please accept me. Your Highness Lien, I really want you with all my sincerity." The little fatty swung his round arm and pushed Xing Tianyang to the side. Xing Tianyang's voice suddenly stopped. The door of the private room on the second floor of the dining hall was pushed open, and a man who was wrapped up tightly came out, only revealing a pair of eyes. A group of people clustered around that person as he walked down the stairs and bumped into Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others. The corners of little fatty's mouth twitched. He lowered his head and his shoulders trembled slightly. Qi Xianxian also glanced at that person, then coughed and took a few steps back. At this moment, a male student who was holding a tray of food happened to turn around, and the bowl of soup in his hand hit the masked man. The soup spilled out and spilled onto the tightly wrapped man's chest, wetting a small patch. "Hey!" Someone beside the man immediately shouted, "How can you walk like that? Don't you have eyes?" Sorry. When the male student saw these people's stance, he quickly lowered his head and apologized profusely. The man who reprimanded him walked up and smacked him. With a clang, the bowl of soup in the male student's hand fell to the ground, creating quite a commotion and attracting many people's attention. "Do you know who this is?" That person put his hands on his hips, looking like a fox exploiting the tiger's might. Chapter 2862. The male student hurriedly shook his head, revealing a look of fear and trepidation. He was just an ordinary student of the Red River tribe, and didn't belong to any of the 3 branches. His tribe was weak, and no one dared to provoke people from the 3 branches. Besides, he was just a new student this year, and he didn't want to cause any trouble in the school. The person who smashed someone's soup bowl pushed the male student with an unforgiving look. "Do you think you can just say a few words of apology?" "Ba Shu." Su Yonyang frowned and shouted at the burly man, "Stop it, come back." The man called Ba Shu looked back at his master. Seeing that his master didn't say anything, he could only walk back resentfully. Su Yonyang understood her master's mood very well. At this time, her master didn't want to talk nonsense with others at all. He wrapped himself up like this because he didn't want to attract attention. However, this idiot Ba Shu made a fuss over such a small matter. He wanted everyone's attention to them and make her master more embarrassed. Yo! Isn't this the Crown Prince of Zhangzhou, His Highness Li? Suddenly, an idiot jumped out of nowhere and slapped Zhangzhou's Crown Prince Ron Li's shoulder as if he was very familiar with him. Ron Li's face stiffened. When this dumbass slapped him, he accidentally pulled off his tightly wrapped hood. Thus, His Highness Li's bruised and swollen face was presented in front of everyone. A student nearby couldn't hold back his laughter and burst out laughing. The rice grains in his mouth were scattered all over the place. What are you laughing at? Don't you want to live anymore? Ba Shu, the old man, straightened his neck and roared in a gruff voice. Oh my God, are you serious? Your Highness Li, you look like this. What's wrong with you? The person cried out in surprise, blinking his eyes and covering his mouth with his hand in shock, expressing his shock and bewilderment in a timely manner. Hell leopard. Ron Li spat out these two words from between his teeth. His pair of narrowed eyes that were almost invisible stared fixedly at the grinning young man in front of him. Ah! Ming Bao reached out to pick at his ears. Rubbing his chin, he looked at him in shock and said, Your Highness Li, you couldn't have been beaten up by someone, right? Who dares to make a move on our Highness Li? Ming Bao said with a shocked expression. Oh my heavens! Wah wah wah, Prince Lu, come and see. His Highness Li was beaten up so badly that his eyes can't even be found. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their lips. Beside him, vassal Prince Lu, who had been loudly called out to, helplessly raised his hand to rub his forehead. He turned to look at Mo Lian's party and stepped forward to bow. Mo Lu greets Your Highness the Crown Prince and His Highness Prince Chen. Mo Lian nodded slightly as he discreetly sized up this handsome and elegant cousin of his. Although they were both princes, this Prince Yong was obviously not on the same level as the Prince Jian Pain. He was much more promising than the Prince Jian Pain. Hey, don't be so polite. We are all cousins, and we are in the academy now, not the imperial court. There's no need to be so particular. Ming Bao came forward and tugged at child Lu. Ah Lu, look. Chapter 2863. I saw it. Mo Lu helplessly facepalmed. He suddenly felt that he shouldn't have acted on a whim today and followed this dunce to the dining hall for a meal. Didn't he see that His Highness the Crown Prince Ron Li's face was already the color of a pig? This guy actually dared to add fuel to the fire and still fearlessly provoke this prince. Wasn't he afraid that he would get enraged and slap him to death? What's going on? Ming Bao giggled as he approached Ron Li. He sized him up several times and clicked his tongue. Heavens, this beating is too ruthless. Who exactly did this? Have you found out? Your Highness Li, as long as you say the word, I will definitely help you ferret this person out to vent this anger. There's no need to trouble Your Highness, Ron Li replied ambiguously and was about to walk outside. Unexpectedly, the moment he moved, he saw Duan Yu's handsome face diagonally opposite him with a spurious smile. He was instantly enraged. The more he looked at this punk's enigmatic face, the more he felt that he was the main culprit who put a gunny sack over him in the middle of the night. Speaking of this matter, Ron Li was truly so angry that he wanted to kick the bucket. He really didn't expect that he would be put in a gunny sack in the dark while taking a stroll outside his own courtyard and taking a look at the academy's night scenery. At that time, he felt uncomfortable all over, as if he was drugged and couldn't use any spiritual energy at all. What was worse was that he had already used a blood stasis dispelling pill on his face earlier, but it was clearly ineffective and couldn't dispel the blood stasis at all. It wasn't like he was so bored that he was willing to wander around the dining hall with this ugly face that had been beaten black and blue. He had made an appointment with 2 seniors from the pill hall to come here to get a blood stasis dispelling pill. Unexpectedly, this blood stasis dispelling pill was completely useless, and he just so happened to run into Ming Bao, this lawless person, so it was even more tragic. At this moment, everyone in the cafeteria was whispering to each other behind their backs. They were secretly laughing and talking about this crown prince from the Tsang province. He was mocking him, the crown prince, for being beaten up so badly. Even his father, the Tsangzhou emperor, wouldn't be able to recognize this crown prince if he were to stand in front of him right now. Rongli flew into a rage out of humiliation and glared at Duanyu, but the latter naturally responded with an innocent expression. "Let's go." Rongli flicked his sleeves and started walking, but before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by Deep Leopard. Don't go, big brother Rongli. Who's your big brother?" Rongli angrily threw away his hand and snorted coldly. At this moment, he just needed a hole to burrow into. Although his face was beaten out of shape and his eyes were narrowed into slits, he could still feel the burning pain on his face. He wanted to curse out loud. Damn it, if he didn't find out who was the one behind his back, he would definitely take that person's life. No, it's them. It should be a group of people who beat him up last night. At the very least, he could feel several fists of different sizes raining down on his face. He really couldn't figure out who he had provoked. At this moment, Rongli was blocked in the dining hall by Deep Leopard, and his face was so dark that it could drip water. "Go away. Don't, big brother Rongli. We haven't seen each other for many years, right? Now that we finally meet, let's sit down and reminisce about old times. If you want to reminisce, find your crown prince to reminisce about old times. I'm not familiar with you." Rongli irritably threw away that guy's hand. Chapter 2864. Ming Bao pursed his lips and said unwillingly, "I don't like talking to that guy." When he thought of Ming Yassi's face, Ming Bao felt like he couldn't eat anymore. Rongli really wanted to yell, "Scram!" at him. But fortunately, the good upbringing in his bones allowed him to forcibly restrain this vulgar word. His Highness Rongli was about to suffer internal injuries from the stifling. "Wow, His Highness Yassi, it's His Highness Yassi. Oh my God, the young sirs from the Qin family are all here. Hurry, hurry, hurry and support me. Why do I feel like my eyes aren't enough to see?" The young sir's outstanding appearances dazzled all the female students present. They were clearly standing in a very ordinary cafeteria, but in their eyes, it was as if they were standing on a hillside filled with flourishing flowers and fluttering willow leaves. Facing them were several extraordinarily handsome young sirs in full bloom. "Ah, I heard His Highness the Crown Prince of Tsangzhou was severely injured from the beating. Where is he?" Ali followed behind Ming Yassi, and every time he opened his mouth, he would say something that was infuriating. Everyone from Tsangzhou involuntarily wanted to grind their teeth. "My apologies, my eldest brother isn't seriously injured. Sorry to disappoint you." Duanyu turned back to rebuke him with a grin. Ali pursed his lips, but when he saw Duanyu refuting him, he didn't say anything else. Ming Yassi quickly walked to Mo Lien and looked around before asking with a frown, "Where is she? What does it have to do with you?" Mo Lien and Duanyu answered in unison. Our dear Ming Yassi's face darkened. "I have something to say to her." Scram. Mo Lien threw him a word. Ming Yassi's handsome face darkened. "Mo Lien, speak properly with me." Seeing that they were conversing, Rongli wanted to circle around them and leave. He really didn't freaking want to continue exposing his ugly side in front of so many outstanding youths. Prince Mo was famous in the 3 provinces because of his extraordinary talent in weapon refinement. Could it be that he, Rongli, was going to be famous because he was beaten up? "Hey, big brother Rongli, big brother Rongli," Underworld Leopard didn't give up and continued to block his path. Rongli's face was so ugly that it was about to emit a yellow light. "What are you doing?" If it were any other time, his stern shout and glare would definitely be able to intimidate many people. But now he had been beaten so badly that the bruises on his face couldn't be removed. The slits in his eyes couldn't be opened at all. How could he still widen his eyes to show his majesty? However, it made his narrowed eyes look especially comical. Ha 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 ha. Little Fatty suddenly laughed out loud. Everyone turned to look at him as if they were looking at a brave warrior. To be able to laugh out loud in front of the Crown Prince of Tsang Province without giving him any face, he was truly courageous. Look, look, he can't even open his eyes. Rong Li's face was red with shame and anger. Su Yonyang couldn't help scolding, how dare you? Even the Crown Prince of Tsang Province is throwing his weight around in our divine province. Mo Lien glanced at Su Yonyang in displeasure. Duan Yu said with a chuckle, since we're all in the same academy, then there's only the difference between schools and students. We're all classmates, so at least we're all equal in the academy. There's no such thing as being impudent or not. Rong Li turned his head and forcefully squeezed out of the crowd. He simply didn't want to waste any more words with them. He had lost a lot of face. Chapter 2866. Before setting off for the Sun Moon Secret Realm, I'll help you reforge your weapons. Everyone was overjoyed and hastily took out their weapons, placing them in front of the Crown Prince one by one. The Crown Prince put them away into his inner world one by one and nodded at them. I need some time. No rush, take your time. The little fatty said with a grin, in any case, you won't need them at the academy for the next few days. Mo Lien nodded. Okay. Everyone chatted idly for a while. When they finished eating and came out of the private room, they bumped into the young masters and misses of the Qin estate in the neighboring room. Crown Prince Lien and Prince Chen are both here. Eldest young Sir Qin greeted them with a grin. Mo Lien and Duan Yu both looked at them expressionlessly. Were these people retarded? They had just met at the dining hall's entrance half an hour ago. Was there a need to put on a fake expression as if they had just met? Did the little stoic really return to the sovereign capital? Eldest young Sir Qin asked nonchalantly as he blinked. What does it have to do with you? Duan Yu and Mo Lien actually said the same thing at the same time. The two of them looked at each other, their beautiful eyes glaring at each other in annoyance. How is it none of my business? Ming Yasi strode towards them from the end of the corridor. I have an extremely important matter to discuss with her. This concerns our future. Prince Mo almost retorted with vulgarities, and a cold glint appeared in his phoenix eyes. What future do you have with my wife? Truly a baffling fellow who lingered around like a ghost. She hated him from the moment she saw him. He was simply 10,000 times more annoying than Duan Yu. If Duan Yu could hear Prince Mo's inner thoughts, he might laugh out loud. Sigh, sigh, she didn't expect herself to be such a perfect person in Prince Mo's eyes. Ming Yasi's face darkened as he icily said, I don't want to talk to you. I only want to talk to her. Mo Lien really wanted to punch this person in the face. Hey, 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 don't be like this. Nether Leopard leapt out from the side, grinning as he blocked Prince Mo and Nether Yaswei. Let's talk things out. Let's talk things out. There's nothing to say to him. Mo Lien and Ming Yasi said one after another. Prince Mo couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Why are you saying the same thing as everyone else today? Actually, we're all from the same academy. Before Ming Bao could finish his sentence, a loud explosion came from above the cafeteria. A slender figure fell down from the hole in the roof like a storm. He landed heavily on the ground. To be more precise, he stepped on an unlucky guy and fell to the ground in a flash. The place where they landed just happened to be on the stairs. Thus, more than half of the wooden stairs were smashed down by the two of them, and the wooden fragments were scattered everywhere. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, Ming Yasi, the young masters of the Qin estate, and the late Mu Xingchen, all the onlookers in the cafeteria were stupefied. Their gazes landed on a stoic and expressionless Sir Jojo patting the dust off his body. At the same time, they revealed extremely speechless expressions. Were they dreaming right now? That figure that fell from the sky just now was our little stoic classmate, right? Her calm and expressionless face involuntarily made them wonder if their eyes were playing tricks on them just now. Fragmented Dreams. Chapter 2867. Due to the destruction of the stairs, Mo Yen, Duan Yu, and Ming Yasi, who were currently standing in the second-floor corridor, could only use the jumping method to descend the stairs. Sir Jojo was truly the center of attention right now. The little fellow stood at the bottom of the dining hall's wooden staircase. As she surveyed her surroundings, everyone's gazes uniformly landed on her. Our dear Jojo was expressionless as she calmly turned around. However, Mo Yen seemed to have noticed something. Her expression shifted, and she abruptly jumped down from the railing. Duan Yu, the little fatty, Qi Xian, and the rest also jumped down after her. Jojo. Mo Yen arrived beside Arbor in a flash. Just as she reached out to hold her waist, the little fellow's complexion paled, and she abruptly spat out a mouthful of blood. Jojo. Qi Xian and the rest reflexively exclaimed. Jojo was fine a moment ago, but she turned around and spat out blood in the next second? What's going on? Everyone's faces were filled with shock. And nothing. A severe glint flashed through Arbor's eyes. The person who hurt me is already dead. Her words implied that she had already taken revenge with her own hands. Everyone didn't understand the reason. Although they really wanted to ask what was going on, their hearts instantly tightened when they saw how she drowsily leaned into Mo Yen's arms after saying that. They quickly asked at once, "Is Jojo injured? Quickly carry her back to Donglin Garden." "I'm fine. I am just a little tired. I'll be fine after resting for a while." Arbor drowsily fell asleep. Master. The sapling Chiochio's call in her conscience gradually faded into the distance like a hazy shadow. Alarmed, Mo Yen quickly carried the little lady and turned to head for Donglin Garden. "Go, inform Mentor Zheng of the pill hall to come over and take a look." Qi Xian and the little fatty quickly rushed out of the dining hall to find Mentor Zheng for treatment. "Please wait, I can take a look at the Crown Princess first." Mo Yen had just arrived at the entrance of the cafeteria with Arbor in her arms when she heard the sound. She immediately turned around and looked into Do Fenghua's dark eyes. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, Mo Yen thought for less than a second and nodded at him. This young Master Do came from a medical family and was once the last disciple of the Celestial Medical Valley's Old Valley Master. His medical skills were naturally recognized by others. Since Do Fenghua had volunteered to take a look at his Jojo, he naturally agreed. Young Master Do quickly walked to the two people's side and indicated for Prince Mo to carry them to the stool next to the dining table. At this moment, no one in the cafeteria made a sound. They held their breaths as they watched the scene before them. To hell with it. A minute ago, this stoic face was still full of vigor and vitality. Now, he actually spat out a mouthful of blood and didn't look well. At this moment, when the Qin estate's eldest and second young masters saw the man's corpse at the top of the stairs, their expressions also changed slightly. The two of them looked at each other before shifting their gazes back to the corpse. That man's face had been completely caved in by a punch. His sternum had also caved in, and several ribs had pierced through his skin just like that. His death looked extremely gruesome. If it weren't for the eagle totem on his shoulder that revealed his identity, the two young masters of the Qin estate really wouldn't have recognized that this person was actually a loyalist by their father's side. What happened? Could it be that this loyalist beat Jojo until he spat out blood? Chapter 2869. Silence hung in the air, and no one bothered with him. Qin Jiu pursed his lips at Duan Yu. Duan Yu, you can't wrong our Qin family. Some of you know very well whether you're wronged or not. Duan Yu said dryly, take this corpse away. Quickly look. At this time, a student suddenly shrieked as he pointed at the corpse lying stiffly on the ground. Duan Yu reflexively turned around to look and saw that the suicide soldier's corpse on the ground was slowly rotting from the inside out, as if it was rotting on its own. Within a short few minutes, a shallow brown substance appeared on the ground, as if some water had been mixed into the mud. It made one's hair stand on end just by looking at it. Such a big person actually turned into a puddle of mincemeat in an instant. The students who were eating looked at their plates and silently put down their chopsticks. It truly made them vomit their dinner from last night. Duan Yu clapped and laughed, nodding as he praised, good skills, good methods. The Qin estate is worthy of being a century-old patrician family of elixirs. Admirable, admirable. Qin Xian's expression was naturally extremely unsightly, and he turned to leave the dining hall with a flick of his sleeve. I will investigate this matter thoroughly and will definitely give you all a complete explanation. The eldest young sir sighed and hastily left with him. On the other side, Prince Mo, who had just returned to Donglin Park, welcomed the Pill Hall's instructor Zhang and another instructor. Instructor, quickly take a look at our Jojo. She vomited blood just now, Qi Xianxian hastily said, her brows completely knitted together. Instructor Zheng quickly went up to check the student's pulse and then said something similar to Dou Fenghua's. He only said that the little stoic was fine. Her body was full of vitality, and the circulation of spirit energy in her meridians was also very normal. Prince Mo's expression was unperturbed, and he quickly sent a look to the dazed Lu Yu on the side. The latter went up to salute the instructors and exchanged pleasantries along the way before asking the two instructors to leave. Prince Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said to the extremely anxious Qi Xianxian, Jojo is fine. Jojo's recovery ability is extremely strong. I was flustered earlier and forgot about this matter. Don't tell anyone else. All right. Qi Xianxian and the others quickly nodded in agreement. Little ball. Prince Mo's handsome face darkened as he called out. The little treant trembled as it crawled out from behind Arbor's shoulder. Its small eyes, which were as bright as black beans, timidly glanced at the crown prince. What's going on? Prince Mo's cold gaze fell on the little treant, causing it to tremble and shake the two leaves on its head. Master, master, we were attacked. Mo Lien raised her eyebrows. It's a long story. The little trent's two branches touched each other subconsciously. Then speak slowly. The little treant stole a glance at Prince Mo's cold expression and stuttered as it spoke. Actually, before noon today, everything was going very smoothly. The little stoic's master expressionlessly accepted the 5,000 spirit coins that the emperor sent as compensation for the employee's leave. Then, she had someone summon the family that had been thrown into jail for no reason and became a mob for a few days. That family's surname was He. They couldn't grow anything in their hometown, so they went to the capital with difficulty to make a living. There were several other families that were in the same situation as them. Their family conditions were especially difficult, and recently, they could only beg to survive. Chapter 2870. At present, he was the only strong man left in the He family. There were so many mouths in the family waiting to eat, and it was hard to find work in the capital. Therefore, he had been mingling with the refugees and beggars for a while. Who would have thought that misfortune never came singly? He was arrested and thrown into jail as a mob, and spent several days in jail for no reason. The 7 or 8-year-old boy from old He's family hid behind his grandmother. His round eyes were filled with childlike innocence as he stared at Arbor. Arbor sized up the strong man and asked, how many refugees like you are there in the campsite? For the peace of the entire sovereign capital, the capital magistrate had set up several campsites in Huanlang district in the western part of the city to separate the refugees that came from the north and south. Life had not reached the point of no return, especially in a place like the Divine Land. It was still considered stable and there were no zombie outbreaks for the time being. Therefore, even if the refugees were staying in the refugee campsite, they could still eat the hot porridge and rice distributed by the imperial court every few days. Yes, there are many people. The strong man from the He clan hurriedly said, there are many people who came from our hometown. There are about 40 to 50 of them. Arbor nodded. I have a job here. I wonder if you are willing to do it. The strong man from the He clan was slightly excited as he quickly said, Crown Princess, please speak. Although he was only an ordinary person, he was full of strength. He believed that as long as he could find a job, he would definitely be able to provide for his family. I want to hire you to mine Chess Mountain Spirit Stone Mine. Mining was a strenuous job. As long as they were trained for a day or two and grasped a certain technique, they would be able to mine. I will pay you 50 spirit coins a day. Are you willing to do it? The man was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. 50 spirit coins a day was basically enough to feed 2 to 3 people. It was just that they had a lot of family members, both men and women can do it. The 2 sturdy-looking middle-aged women from the He clan were overjoyed when they heard this. They immediately asked, Crown Princess, is that true? Can we go mine too? Generally speaking, there weren't many jobs that women could do, especially when it came to physical labor like mining. Basically, they wouldn't recruit women to work. The little Crown Princess nodded. 2 days off every month and 5 days off during festivals. If you do well, I'll reward you. Are you willing to? Yes, yes. Alright, go to the refugee camp and put up a notice. I want to recruit around 300 people. Arbor's expression was indifferent as he said, bring in those with good character. We don't need those who are used to sneaking around. Yes, yes. Crown Princess, this little one understands. The He clan's burly man nodded excitedly. Arbor turned to glance at Huifeng. I'll leave it to you. Huifeng rubbed his nose and could only lead the happy family out to handle some matters. Although Auntie Jing didn't say it, she truly admired this little crown princess from the bottom of her heart. This young crown prince consort looked cold and didn't seem to be a very kind person in her usual actions. However, everything she did was in the direction of leading people onto the path of the Great Tao. The imperial court's occasional relief could only provide some refugees with basic food and clothing. In essence, the root of the problem was to find them a stable job. This way, they would naturally have a stable source of income every month. They would no longer need to wander around the imperial capital as beggars or refugees. Chapter 2871. In reality, the young couple had already chosen the mining team. The crown prince had already made proper arrangements for the talents in ore selection and smelting. If they chose a portion of the hidden night pavilion members with a cultivation base to mine naturally, things would progress at a faster pace. But now, the young crown princess mobilized a portion of ordinary people to mine. Presumably, progress wouldn't be too fast for such a large Chess Mountain spirit mine. However, by doing this, the crown princess really did resolve a headache for the capital magistrate. Aunt Jing curled her lips and suppressed the smile bubbling up from the bottom of her heart. Who said that the little stoic crown princess was someone who didn't understand the ways of the world? Her returning the favor would definitely make stubborn Chow burst with joy. Crown princess, when do you plan to leave? The young crown princess pursed her lips. Don't think she was stupid. When Eunuch Hu came to deliver the compensation, he asked her a few questions in a roundabout way, all of which were about when she would scram. It was definitely Mo Lian's father who didn't like her and didn't want to see her. He wanted her to scram as soon as possible. I'll leave right away, the young crown princess said as she stood up. How rare. Did he think she was willing to stay in the imperial capital? Her husband wasn't here, so she wasn't willing to stay a moment longer. Her husband was still hoping for a reunion with Sir Jojo, humph. The little fellow walked out briskly. I'll leave after taking a look at Saishio. After a night of rest, Saishio's injuries had recovered a lot. Xiao Mu headed to the Kaidai pavilion to instruct Saishio and Saichi. She also left behind some sacred rice, spiritual vegetables, and fruits for shopkeeper who was beside himself with joy. She said to him, in a few days, a person with good handwriting will come to work. At that time, have him write the menu and draw the recipe. Manager whose mouth twitched, and he nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. Don't worry, Crown Princess. This lowly one will carefully observe that Zhang family brat. Arbor responded expressionlessly. Before he left, he said, put the emperor on the blacklist. Everyone fell to the ground. When Arbor went out, he happened to hear the shopkeeper's head hit the door frame, making a very dull, dong sound. She pursed her lips and said to Eunuch Chen, whose eyes were twitching, Mo Lusheng is very stingy, not at all like his elder brother Prince Kong. Wasn't it just 5,000 spirit coins from him? Why did he look so eager as if he couldn't wait for her to never return to the imperial capital? How petty. Unlike Prince Kong, who gave her the entire half-moon cliff and the entire hot spring villa. After fiercely ridiculing the great emperor in his heart, Arbor sent a message to Huifeng, telling him to stay here and finish the recruitment for Chess Mountain Spirit Mine before returning to north-facing Great Forest. Arbor summoned Qing Luan and flew out of the city. She planned to fly for a while and calculate the distance before using the teleportation array. At that time, maybe after a few teleportations, she would be directly teleported to somewhere near the academy. Arbor thought to himself. Not long after they left the sovereign capital, they sensed the presence of powerful enemies. What was going on? As if in response to her keen senses, an arrow pierced through the air and arrived behind her in an instant, accompanied by a series of whistling sounds. The instant the little stoic's face darkened, she pressed down on Qing Luan's large head. Qing Luan dodged that sharp arrow with a whoosh and flew up high. There was still time, wait. Chapter 2872. 7 or 8 men of sacrifice in black suddenly rushed out from the outskirts, their eagle-like eyes fixed on Miss Chiao. Although Jojo was a little surprised, at least she didn't look surprised at all. She didn't waste time talking to them at all. She directly shot out several flying needles, scattering them towards the people around her like a fairy scattering flowers. Jojo didn't even bother to ask stupid questions like, "Who are you? Who cares who they are?" Since they came to kill her, she should be prepared to face death. Arbor's attack was swift and fierce. After a round of flying needles, she instantly drew out hundreds of talismans from her inner world, and without saying anything, she smashed them towards the men in black in front of her. The men of sacrifice in black were smashed by the 5 spirit talismans. Although a few of them managed to dodge in time, they only moved their bodies a little. But 2 of them were wrapped in several thunder spirit talismans, and were solidly struck by lightning. Their faces darkened as they fell to the ground, paralyzed. Arbor's fighting spirit was completely aroused by them. Everyone only saw a little girl with a paralyzed face fly down from the back of the blue phoenix, and with a flash of a bright longsword in her hand, the sword light attacked their necks. Dense murderous intent approached. A large copper net appeared in the hands of 2 of the men of sacrifice, and the 2 of them worked together to wrap Arbor's head. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Mu flew up and delivered a spinning kick, landing squarely on the man's chest. The unlucky man was kicked out by her, and then fell heavily to the ground. The startled swan dagger in Arbor's conscience jumped out with a whoosh, and with lightning speed, it quickly slit a man's neck. Just like that, in less than 5 minutes of fighting, one of their companions died right in front of them. Although they were men of sacrifice for their master, who would want to die when there was a chance to live? But today, the order from the top was to drag the little girl to death even if he had to drag it out. So none of them could back down, and they had to continue. Even if this girl's methods were swift and fierce, and she wasn't an easy bone to chew. Get out of the way. A deep voice came from the back of the crowd. The crowd parted in an instant, allowing an ordinary-looking middle-aged man to dash in front of Arbor. The man didn't say anything and directly shot a shuttle towards Arbor's face. His method was especially vicious. She wanted to kill her and ruin her face at the same time. Xiao Mu sneered, and she shot out an icicle with a backhand to block his attack. The startled swan dagger spun around the middle-aged man at a speed comparable to light before landing in her hand with a whoosh. A line of blood appeared on the man's arm. On the other hand, a hidden weapon had left a white mark on the back of his hand. How dare he hurt her? Arbor's heart was filled with anger. He reached out his hand to hold down the little white snake that was about to move and said in his heart, "Don't move." She wanted to personally deal with this person who dared to hurt her. Arbor's eyes flashed with a fierce light as he flew forward. The startled swan dagger spun rapidly and stabbed towards the middle-aged man. Ha! The middle-aged man's eyes revealed a mocking smile. He waved his hand and set up a spiritual barrier, easily blocking the startled swan dagger's attack. The startled swan dagger stabbed into the spiritual barrier in front of the man. Even if her spiritual energy surged, it still couldn't pierce through this person's spiritual barrier. Clearly, this person's defensive power was above hers, and his cultivation realm was definitely much higher than hers. Chapter 2874. A purple shadow flashed past, and an 8 trigrams formation seemed to appear in front of her, firmly binding this middle-aged man within. Supreme-grade purple talisman, the Earth rank 8 trigrams binding talisman. Its effects were marvelous. Once it was activated, anyone below the god realm would inevitably be affected. Boss. Amidst everyone's astonishment, they saw the little stoic charge in front of their boss like a cannonball and land a punch on his face. The man was bound by the 8 trigrams binding talisman, so he naturally couldn't move in the slightest. This punch landed solidly on his face without any obstruction. Everyone could clearly hear the man's bones breaking with a crack. The bridge of his nose was broken, and the punch even caused this middle-aged man's entire face to cave in a bit. The little girl's move instantly made everyone's hair stand on end. Swish! A shadow flashed past, and they discovered that they had rolled out of a dazzlingly bright light screen. At the same time, the startled swan dagger flashed past, taking the life of one of the black-clothed kamikaze soldiers. Fast and precise. Arbor pursed her thin lips and lifted her small hand, expressionlessly touching the blood that was faintly seeping out of her arm. Naive. She coldly uttered this word. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly. The 2 black-clothed kamikaze soldiers in front of her didn't hesitate in the slightest and promptly self-destructed in front of her. The light from the self-destruction rushed over. Because the distance was very close, even though Arbor had set up a defensive barrier and countless defensive talisman matrices with a wave of her hand, she still couldn't resist these 2 terrifying forces. After all, these 2 kamikaze soldiers had cultivations above level 10 spiritual masters. As a result, she was unavoidably flung flying, and her internal organs suffered a certain degree of pressure. Cough, cough. A trace of blood seeped out of the corner of Arbor's lips. She was very clear that her internal organs had been damaged. The more furious she was, the colder and more emotionless her eyes became. His eyes were filled with killing intent. No one is to come out and help me. Her words were so calm that they were almost callous, instantly stopping the saplings, Chio, and the others from jumping out. Master Silver was silently enraged. Purple talismans, purple talismans, purple talismans. Around the little girl's body, purple talismans slowly flashed and floated up one by one. After a flash of purple light, the Vajra talisman attached itself to her hand. Arbor's expression was extremely cold. Die! She pounced on him, her small jade-like hand, which had the Vajra talisman attached to it, coldly hammered his chest. Several of his ribs were instantly broken. The ribs were inserted into the man's heart and lungs in a contorted manner. Large amounts of blood flowed out. However, there was not the slightest bit of humanity in her eyes. "Kill him." At this moment, these words were echoing in her mind. It was as if she had gone mad and had fallen into a demonic nightmare. "Jojo." The venerable peach blossom immortal suddenly appeared beside her and reached out to grab her. However, he grabbed nothing but air. A vicious glint flashed in her eyes, and she immediately dragged that person into the teleportation array. The venerable peach blossom immortal had no choice but to follow the talisman array. With a whoosh, Arbor dragged that middle-aged man and teleported countless times, directly to the sky above the academy. After passing through the academy's great defensive array, Arbor actually did not know where she had been teleported to. Her eyes could only see blood. She stepped on that person and suddenly fell from the sky. With a bang, she smashed into something. Fragments flew everywhere. The 8th watch ended. Chapter 2875. After listening to Qiuqiu's recount, Mo Lien was stunned when she learned that the little fellow had been shaken by the impact of the 2 self-detonations. Suddenly, he had the impulse to carry this little girl over and examine her carefully from head to toe. Was the self-detonation a joke? No wonder the little fellow's internal organs were injured and she vomited blood. This arrogant little thing. If not for the fact that she was still in a deep sleep, she would have dragged her out and given her a good beating. How could she be so willful and reckless? She could have chosen to let others help her, right? On second thought, this was the little fellow's personality. She would become stronger when faced with a strong opponent and would never back down. She had always been so proud and aloof. Mo Lien was silent for a long time. Then, she turned to look at the venerable peach blossom immortal, who was beside the bed. Qi Xianxian stayed by Arbor's side to take care of her. The rest followed Mo Lien out. He-Chen followed beside her. As they walked out, he frowned and said, "I think there might be something wrong with the little girl's state of mind at certain times." Mo Lien stopped in her tracks. Little Fatty and the rest stopped as well. Their burning gazes landed on the venerable peach blossom immortal. He-Chen looked at them. In the beginning, when the little fellow was surrounded by a few kamikaze warriors, she behaved very normally. He-Chen recalled and said with a heavy expression, "Until the leader of the kamikaze warriors you saw in the dining hall appeared, she was still trying her best to fight with those kamikaze warriors. From the moment the leader of the kamikaze warriors left a white mark on her hand, the little fellow became a little crazy. Yes, a little crazy. From the moment she was surrounded by an array to the moment she tried all ways to break out of the array, her vicious aura began to boil to the extreme. That middle-aged leader used a whip to hit her arm. After she broke free, she was surrounded by countless spirit beasts. Even now, she doesn't let us help her. Why is that?" When he heard Qiuqiu's summary, Mo Lien could still accept it. Now that he heard the details from the venerable peach blossom immortal, Prince Mo became more and more alarmed. It was actually so dangerous. The venerable peach blossom immortal was right. Why did she not allow anyone to help her in such a dangerous situation? That was because at that time, she had completely fallen into a state where she had no friends, no relatives, no one. In her eyes, in the world, and even in her heart, there was no one else. The only thing left was the conviction to kill the other party. Until she was blasted away by someone's self-detonation, this little fellow had completely lost her mind. Ji-Chen said with a heavy expression, "I didn't even have time to catch her. You don't know how many purple talismans she threw out back then. She probably used up all of her offensive and supportive purple talismans. Have you all realized that Jojo has a twisted attitude towards getting injured?" The venerable peach blossom immortal pointed out sharply. Everyone's heart trembled slightly. He couldn't help but recall the bits and pieces of their interactions. This was especially true for Prince Mo. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's analysis had brought back a series of memories. He recalled that when they met at the Quoto village market, the hyena that Lu Yexin had released had left 3 bloody scratches on the little girl. How had she dealt with it? She had killed that hyena. Using a cruel method, she had cut open its stomach and left 6 deep bloody scratches on its body. There was also the 3-sect competition in Xixia Valley. Chapter 2876. When the little fellow met the masked Hui En, a white mark appeared on the back of her hand because of Hui En's sudden attack. Hui En was sent flying by his kick on the spot. She was in so much pain that she could not get up. But the little fellow was obviously not satisfied with such an outcome. In the end, she still insisted that Hui En leave her hand behind. At that time, he only thought that the little fellow did this because she was furious. After all, she usually treated those who liked to jump up and down to provoke her as idiots. Now it seemed that he still did not know her well enough. This little thing seemed to have an almost obsessive pursuit of perfection towards every inch of her skin. She would not allow anyone to harm any inch of her skin. Even if it was just a scratch on the back of her hand, she would not allow it. In other words, no matter how you provoked her verbally, once or twice, she might treat you as an idiot and ignore you. By the 3rd time, she might not be able to bear it and send you flying. But if you hurt her skin, she would completely turn into a demon and fight you to the death. Mo Lien and He Chen silently met each other's eyes, and they both saw the deep worry in each other's eyes. To put it in a deeper way, the little fellow's state was that there was a demon in her heart. It was very disadvantageous for her to go through the 5 spirits reincarnation test when she ascended to the immortal state in the future. East of Dragon Flame City, Qin Estate. Qin Hong was trimming a unique herb in the greenhouse. When he heard footsteps hurriedly coming from behind, he did not turn his head and just said with a cold expression, "Is everything done?" "It failed, master." Qin Hong's originally steady hand was slightly crooked. With a snap, he directly cut off half of the graceful herb with a pair of scissors. The middle of the herb was cut off, and the roots quickly withered. In less than a second, the herb turned into withered branches and withered leaves and drooped down. Qin Hong stared at the scissors in his hand with a pained expression, wishing that he could smash a hole in the person's head. Looking at his master's terrifying expression, the middle-aged man who came to report the news trembled slightly. His eyes trembled slightly, and he immediately lowered his head. Qin Hong threw the scissors on the ground with a bang. Trying to control his anger, he asked in a low voice, "What happened?" "Master, Bingba's life lantern suddenly shattered." "What?" Qin Hong could not believe his ears. He hurriedly lifted his robe and said, "Take me there." Qin Chao was family head Qin's right-hand man, so he understood family head Qin's intentions very well. Hearing family head Qin's words, he hurriedly led family head Qin to the small temple where the elite death warriors' life lanterns were enshrined. The 2 of them hurriedly walked in and saw that there were 4 to 5 rows of life lamps in the small Buddha hall. They were swaying in a special transparent container. The 3rd life lamp in the last row had completely disappeared. The corners of Qin Hong's mouth drooped. His shrewd old eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. What message did the life lantern miniature receive? Zither Grass waved his hand, and the scene in the life lamp miniature jumped out. However, the life lantern miniature could only intercept a small portion of information, so the 2 of them could only watch in trepidation as the little stoic in the projection stared at Bingba as if she was looking at a dead person and punched Bingba's cheek so hard that it caved in. "What kind of power is this?" Qin Hong exclaimed. Qin Grass couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. Chapter 2877. Originally, he was planning to personally lead a team to exterminate this little stoic girl. Later, He thought that the other party was the crown princess of the divine province after all. If he personally led a team to look for trouble, it would be fine if they didn't investigate, but once they did, he would also be implicated. At that time, perhaps the family head would push him out to be the scapegoat to protect the family clan. Hence, he didn't wade into this muddy water and had Bingba lead a dozen kamikaze soldiers to surround the little stoic. Now that he thought about it, it was truly fortunate that he didn't go. Otherwise, who the hell knew if he could withstand the little stoic's powerful punch? The two of them didn't see the subsequent scene of the little stoic flinging out countless purple talismans from the life lamp miniature. However, the punch that caved in Bingba's cheekbone already made them extremely shocked and gloomy. Why is it like this? Qin Hong muttered to himself. Then, as if a divine light flashed in his mind, he cried out in surprise, "Heh, I didn't expect that after eating rice for so many years and walking so many paths, I would actually be deceived by this little girl. She isn't the weak little level 3 spiritual master she looks like. She definitely isn't." Qin Mu shouted angrily. This little brat really deceived everyone so bitterly. Qin Mu carefully thought about it. Indeed, the power of that little girl's punch that appeared in the life lamp miniature just now was able to cave in the cheekbone of a level 15 great spiritual master like Bingba. Evidently, her strength was about the same as Bingba's. She's a level 15 great spiritual master. Qin Hong roared angrily and smashed his fist on the wooden pillar beside him. That damn darn brat, we were deceived by her. She must have some magic treasure that conceals her aura or a talisman that lowers her cultivation realm. If he had known earlier that this damn brat was a level 15 great spiritual master, he definitely wouldn't have just sent Bingba, a level 15 great spiritual master, to deal with her. Thinking about it, if he sent so many kamikaze soldiers after a mere level 3 spiritual master, they should have been able to take her head, right? However, they didn't. The more Qin Hong thought about it, the angrier he became. His fingers clenched so tightly that they made cracking sounds. Despicable! Qin Mu said angrily. After being surrounded by kamikaze soldiers this time, the little stoic would definitely be more cautious. It might be difficult to find an opportunity to intercept and kill her when she was alone. Patriarch! At this moment, Qin Grass interrupted him with a trembling voice. He bent over and handed over a communication jade talisman. Yes, young master sent a message. Qin Hong's face was cold. He took the communication jade amulet and glanced at it. He was so angry that he smashed the communication jade amulet on the ground. Damn it, what was going on with this little stoic? Even if he could fly, it was impossible for him to reach the Royal Academy from the imperial capital so quickly. But now, Xin had sent him a message asking him what was going on. It was obvious that she knew what he had done. Xin also warned him not to act again, and forbade him from sending any more men to deal with Arbor. Yes, it was a warning, it was an angry reprimand. He could imagine his son, who had always been calm and composed, flying into a rage in the royal school. To be honest, Qin Hong was in a very bad mood after giving his son such a warning. Why did he do so much? Wasn't it to avenge the destruction of his clone? Why did his son not appreciate his kindness and blame him for acting on his own accord? Damn it! Qin Hong paced up and down the room. Chapter 2878. He glanced at Qin Chao solemnly. Go to the outskirts to inquire again. We must erase all traces of our actions. Qin Chao promptly nodded in agreement and led the group to the outskirts. On the other side, Mu Qingya had Mu Liang lead a group of elite disciples from the Mu family and hastily rush out of the imperial capital. They searched the outskirts but didn't find any traces of the little stoic. How can there be no one? Mu Qingya asked anxiously, have you notified master? We've already notified madam. Mu Qingya stomped her feet in anxiety. Sai, what exactly is going on? Why would someone attack Jojo in the outskirts without rhyme or reason? Madam, this place is very dangerous. You had better return first, Mu Yang said with a troubled expression. He also sighed ruefully in his heart, Madam truly cares a lot about Miss Chiao. As soon as she heard a subordinate report that Miss Chiao was ambushed not long after leaving the capital, she immediately rushed over and wouldn't listen to him no matter how he persuaded her. Seeing her so worried, Mu Yang casually comforted her. Miss Chiao is blessed by the heavens, so she should be fine. I hope so. Mu Qingya paced back and forth anxiously beside Mu Liang. If something happens to Jojo, how am I going to explain it to Xingchen and her deceased mother? Madam, she'll be fine. Mu Liang tried to persuade him again, but he really did not have anything else to say. He turned around and ordered the Mu clan's elite disciples beside him to go further away and search for the person. Madam, don't worry. His Majesty already knows about this matter. Just now, he sent quite a few people to search everywhere. They only found traces of a battle, but there weren't too many bloodstains there. Miss Chiao is probably fine. Mu Liang sighed ruefully in his heart. A biological mother and daughter were nothing more than this. Madam was truly a kind-hearted and good woman. She could even treat the former madam's daughter so well with all her heart. She was just an ordinary woman, but she rushed over to deal with her stepdaughter's matter with all her heart. It really was hard on her to be so worried to this extent. Mu Liang, send people further away and search carefully. Maybe Qiao Qiao got hurt when she was fighting with someone and ran far away. Yes, madam. Mu Liang sent 2 disciples of the Mu family to protect the woman while he led his men to mount his horse. Just as he was about to leave, his eyes couldn't help but turn cold and his mouth let out a surprised and bewildered cry. Madam, it's eldest miss. Why would eldest miss suddenly appear here? Mu Rochuan, who had just walked out of the teleportation glyph array, looked a little disheveled. Where was the image of a delicate and charming young lady from before? Eldest miss. Mu Liang urged his horse and rushed over. He quickly dismounted and subconsciously reached out to support Mu Roxian. Mu Rochuan swung her arm and pushed away Mu Liang's support. There were abrasions all over her face and body. Her hair and face were stained with something unknown. At this moment, she looked as miserable as a beggar. There was no trace of her former elegance, coldness, and nobility. Mu Qingya's eyes narrowed and she hurried forward. Xian, what's wrong with you? How did it end up like this? Where are you from? When Mu Rochuan saw her mother, she suddenly burst into tears and rushed over to hug her mother, Mu Qingya. Mu Qingya's body stiffened slightly. Don't wait for me. I probably won't finish updating until midnight. Chapter 2879. She was probably not used to her daughter's fragile state. Mu Qingya gently pushed Mu Rochuan away and looked at her lovingly. Child, what happened? Don't panic. Tell mother. Mu Rochuan didn't sense anything wrong and continued to hug her mother tightly as she cried, Mother, mother. It really wasn't easy for her to make the journey. At first, she just wanted to come back to see her mother, talk to her, and tell her what was on her mind. But she didn't expect that there would be a slight deviation when she passed through the great north-facing forest. The teleportation talisman array sent her to the great north-facing forest. Left with no choice, she could only fight her way out of the encirclement. She had nearly used up all the talismans she had on her to travel all the way from the Royal Academy to the Imperial capital. The moment she saw Mu Qingya, all the grievances and depression in her heart turned into deep sadness. All she wanted to do was to snuggle into her mother's embrace and seek comfort. Mu Qingya's expression stiffened. She raised her right hand in the air for a long time before it came down with difficulty. She patted her daughter's shoulder and said with a smile, Xian, what's wrong with you? You're not like your usual self. Don't cry first. Finding your sister is more important. Mu Qingya gently pushed her away again and looked at her lovingly with a warm expression. When your sister left the imperial capital this afternoon, she was ambushed by a group of unknown death warriors. Her whereabouts are unknown now, she's dead. Mu Rochuan suddenly shrieked. Her abnormal behavior made Mu Qingya frown slightly. A faint trace of displeasure slid through her heart. She shook her head and said, Jojo is blessed by the heavens. Of course she'll be fine. Mu Rochuan subconsciously clenched her fists. Mother, I have something to tell you. You suddenly came back from the Imperial Academy. Something must have happened. But your matter isn't urgent. Find your sister first, sister. Since when do I have a sister? Mu Rochuan's face suddenly twisted. She couldn't help but shout, Mother, have you forgotten that I'm the one who crawled out of your stomach? That so-called sister has nothing to do with us at all. Mu Qingya looked at her in shock. What did you say? How can you say that? Isn't that so? She was just a wild child that no one wanted. She had never been loved by a father or mother since she was young. Mother, why do you have to curry favor with her? Is it because she is different from before and is now the crown princess of the divine land? Slap. Mu Qingya's right hand trembled as she stared in shock at her daughter, who had a somewhat sinister expression on her face. She simply could not believe that these words actually came out of her daughter's mouth. Was she bewitched? Why would he say that? Mu Rochuan couldn't believe that her mother would slap her in the face for the sake of another family's child. She screamed, Mother! I'm your biological daughter, aren't I? Why do you only think about protecting her and not think about your own daughter? For her, you can hit me like this. Are you still my mother? Mu Rochuan glared angrily at Mu Qingya before turning around and running towards the Mu estate. Eldest young miss, eldest young miss. Nanny Chiu called out from behind her. Chapter 2880. Mu Qingya was also completely stunned, as if she couldn't understand her daughter's current behavior. She was frozen on the spot. Madam, madam. Nanny Chiu hurriedly comforted her. Eldest miss was just momentarily distracted. She didn't mean to contradict you, madam. This servant sees that eldest miss's complexion is a bit off. Madam, you should hurry back to the Mu residence to see how eldest miss is doing. Mu Qingya naturally also saw that Mu Rochuan's situation was very strange. She was also somewhat worried about her daughter, but she was very worried about Jojo if she didn't personally follow up. Mu Liang noticed Mu Qingya's hesitation, and he hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Don't worry, madam. We'll do our best to search for Miss Qiao, and will absolutely not be careless and miss any search area. Mu Qingya smiled and nodded. That's good. Then I'll have to trouble you, Mu Liang. You're too polite, madam. Mu Liang was flattered and hurriedly cupped his fists again. Mu Qingya was ultimately still worried about her daughter. Nanny Chiu helped her into the carriage and they headed to the Mu residence. Shortly after entering the residence, Mu Qingya brought Nanny Chiu and the others to her daughter's Lotus Pavilion court. Mu Qingya frowned in confusion when she was told that her daughter had locked herself in her room after returning. Not long ago, when her daughter left the Mu residence to go to the Royal Academy, she still looked happy and excited, as if she yearned for the academy life. But who knew that in just a few days, she would run back as if she had suffered all kinds of grievances. Mu Qingya sighed and pushed open the door to her daughter's room to enter. Xian, what's wrong with you? Mu Rochuan was so angry that she had covered herself in the blanket and was sobbing softly. When she heard the voice, she couldn't help but cry out, You don't even acknowledge me as your daughter. Why are you still looking for me? Mu Qingya couldn't help but be stunned. Why don't I acknowledge you as my daughter? Xian, don't throw a tantrum anymore. Mu Qingya reached out to pull the blanket off her daughter. Looking at her red eyes from crying, she frowned and said, But someone in the academy has wronged you. Mu Rochuan burst into tears. Mother, there's a crack in my Dantian spiritual void realm. What? Mu Qingya's expression changed slightly as her gaze turned unpredictable. A crack has appeared in your spiritual void realm? Yes, it's because of her. That so-called bullshit sister. Mu Rochuan couldn't help but grit her teeth and cry out, it's because of her that my state of mind was affected. That's why, she recounted everything that had happened in the academy, including the conversation that Shi Yongqian had with her. She told her mother everything without missing a single word. She poured out all her grievances, discomfort, shock, and hatred to her mother like she was pouring out all her bitterness. She thought that her mother would definitely comfort her, but who would have thought Mu Qingya looked at her with an indifferent expression. After a long while, she said, so, you believe that the reason why your spiritual void realm ruptured is because your sister is especially outstanding. This matter has agitated you? Mu Rochuan only felt that her mother's words were extremely grating, and her expression changed several times. She couldn't help but defend herself forcefully, she's an orphan who has no parents and has wandered on Sikong planet for so many years. What does she have to compare with me? Silly. Mu Qingya looked at her daughter coldly. Chapter 2881. Your spiritual ruin mirror was damaged because of your unstable state of mind. How can you blame it on your sister? Your sister is an Earth-rank talisman master. Your sister knows how to draw teleportation talisman arrays because she learned it herself. Why are you jealous of her? I'm not jealous of her. Mu Rochuan defended herself. She's nothing. She's just a pitiful little worm who has been wandering in the lower star domain for many years. Right, how could she be jealous of such a pitiful little worm? Mu Qingya shook her head. You're too eager for quick success and refuse to admit your mistake. Looking at her mother's disappointed expression, Mu Rochuan could not help but burst into tears. She was only a 17-year-old girl after all. Her tolerance was not as strong as she thought. Alright, don't cry. Mu Qingya sighed helplessly and hugged her daughter. She patted her gently on the back twice. It's not like there's no way to fix the crack in the spiritual void realm. You just need to find the herbs and get an alchemist above the black rank to refine a sky-mending pill for you. Mother, I'm really not jealous of her. Alright. Mu Qingya nodded with a smile. She knew that the girl was thin-skinned and could not put down her pride, so she went along with her. You have to remember that your sister is a talented person. You have to be on good terms with her. You're not allowed to say things like what you said today about a pitiful little wild child in the future. Mu Rochuan sobbed and nodded. She felt a little vexed and regretful. She had said those things to Arbor in front of so many people. If these words were to reach Arbor's ears, things would not end well. Alright, Mu Liang and the rest are not outsiders. They will not spread it. However, you have to be more careful with what you say in the future. Besides, Jojo is your sister. How can you have such thoughts about your sister and say such things? Mu Qingya patted the back of her daughter's hand. You can't write two Mu characters with one stroke. You and your sister are the legitimate daughters. You have to support the entire Mu family together in the future. The higher she goes, the better the Mu family and you will be. Don't listen to her childish words. She always wants to distance herself from our Mu family. As long as the old master is here, this relationship can't be cleared at all, you know. Mu Qingya kindly tidied up her daughter's hair and smiled faintly at her. You were right to reject that cunning Shi Yongqian. You don't have to interact with that kind of person in the future. You and Jojo are family. Don't be instigated by outsiders and do something stupid. Mother, I understand. Mu Rochuan lowered her head and said. You don't have to feel inferior. She thinks that her status is inferior to your sister's. Mother never told you, but you've been engaged since you were young. Your future husband is not much worse than the crown prince of the divine prefecture. Mu Rochuan seemed to have been struck by lightning. She stared blankly at her mother and asked in a trembling voice, "Mother, what are you talking about? You left in a hurry before, so mother forgot to tell you. Originally, I wanted to find an opportunity to visit you at the academy and tell you about this. Since you're back, I'll tell you." Chapter 2882. Xian Per, you're also the future crown princess. The crown princess of the underworld region. I'm impossible. Mu Rochuan's eyes widened as she looked at her mother in disbelief. Silly child, why is it impossible? Mu Rochuan smiled. This marriage has been decided long ago. However, the underworld region's crown prince left the underworld region for some reason and has never returned. Oh, that's right. The two of you should have met in the academy, right? Mu Qingya looked at her gently. Recently, mother received a letter from the underworld region's imperial noble consort. This matter has been preliminarily decided. Impossible. Mu Rochuan stood up with a slightly agitated expression. Mu Qingya saw that she didn't seem very happy about this marriage and couldn't help but frown. It said that the underworld region's crown prince is a man of striking appearance and extremely talented. What are you dissatisfied about? Isn't the reason why you were affected by your sister, causing your mind to be unstable and the spiritual void realm to crack partly because your sister has been suppressing you in every way ever since she returned to the divine continent? Not only is her talent more outstanding than yours, even her status is more noble than yours. As long as you marry the underworld region's crown prince, you will be the official underworld region's crown princess in the future. I don't even know this person. Mu Rochuan couldn't help but cry out agitatedly. I am not marrying. Mother, don't randomly matchmake me. Mu Qingya couldn't help but find it funny when she saw her anxious and angry appearance. How is mother randomly matchmaking you? The marriage contract between you and the underworld region's crown prince was written a few years ago. She took out a yellow storage talisman from her pocket and took out an exquisitely carved ebony box. She handed it to Mu Rochuan. Take a look at this marriage contract. Mu Rochuan opened the ebony box with trembling hands and took out a slightly yellowed marriage contract that had the fragrance of ink. She read line by line and felt her vision darken. The marriage contract was written very clearly. It was a promise made by the imperial noble consort Lu to thank the Mu family for saving her. When her son came of age 20 years later, he would come and ask for the Mu family's eldest daughter's hand in marriage. The marriage contract didn't specify what kind of favor it was. No, I have no feelings for this underworld crown prince. I don't even know him. I won't marry him. Mu Rochuan threw the marriage contract out. Mu Qingya's expression changed several times. She looked at her daughter coldly. Xian Per, you're too willful and reckless. Your father is also aware of this matter. Your marriage is already set in stone. After you return to the academy, you should spend more time with the underworld crown prince. You don't have to say anything. Seeing that her daughter still wanted to refute, Mu Qingya raised her hand to stop her. Partners are all born from experience. If you don't spend more time with Ming Province's crown prince, how do you know that he won't be your future husband? Besides, there is already a marriage certificate as proof. You are his woman when you are alive, and you can only be a ghost of the Ming family when you die. Mu Rochuan's face turned pale as if she was struck by lightning. Mother actually said such decisive words to her, not giving her any leeway to refute. Royal Academy Donglin Garden. When Xiao Mu woke up from her daze, she reflexively activated her inner vision and carefully examined the object enveloped by the hazy mist inside her spiritual mound. This thing looked a bit like a white duck egg. Could it be that she accidentally swallowed some egg? She hurriedly dug out the 2 white duck eggs and heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that she was a bit nervous. 8 night watch ended. I'll adjust the time tomorrow and sleep to sleep. Chapter 2883. Looking at the perfectly intact egg in her hand, Arbor thought to herself that she was seriously ill. Why did she think that she had eaten an egg by mistake? She focused her mind and carefully looked at the foggy thing in her spiritual mound realm for a while. After distinguishing it again, she felt that the thing that was tightly wrapped in the fog did not look like a white duck egg, but more like a spherical object. What was it? She could not figure it out, and at this moment, her divine sense had automatically withdrawn from her inner sight. She retracted her gaze, but her gaze was somewhat dazed as it landed in front of her. Strange, when did she return to her own room in Donglin Garden? The little guy turned over and sat up, looking around. He lifted the blanket and was about to jump down when he felt his little head become dizzy. She quickly leaned against the bed frame and gently massaged her swollen forehead. It was already 10:00 in the night. Why was Donglin Garden so quiet, without any sound of people? Could it be that Qi Xianxian and the rest had not returned from class? Arbor held on to the stool beside the bed and stood up. She did not dare to shake her head as she felt a little uncomfortable. Why was there no one here? She pushed open the door and walked out. Looking at the empty courtyard, she was a little dazed. Where did Mo Lien go? The little Emperor Jojo was sick, and there was no one in the house. The little fellow's little face unconsciously scrunched up into a ball. He sat dejectedly on the doorsill, propping up his chin with one hand as he angrily stared at the pitch-black courtyard. After waiting for a full 15 minutes, there was really nothing in the courtyard other than the sound of the wind. Sir Jojo was a little angry. Usually, before the sky turned dark, everyone would have left school. Why was she the only one in Donglin Garden today? Even the kitchen maid who usually held a spatula and made a fuss was nowhere to be seen. Jojo was very angry. She puffed up her little face, steadied herself, and slowly stood up, walking towards the courtyard door. She sat on a small stone stool at the courtyard door, hugged her body, and supported her chin with her two little hands, staring at the road in front of her. It was dark and led to the largest cultivation hall in the north of the learning area. No one came over at all. There wasn't even a single star in the dark sky, let alone a moon. It was so dark that he couldn't see the road under his feet. The little fellow became more and more depressed. He lowered his little chin and called out in a muffled voice, "Chocho, why is there no one here?" She pursed her lips and lowered her head to lie on her knees. A few minutes later, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Chocho. Chocho. Jianjian. Jianjian. Dirt lump, dirt lump. Arbor suddenly jumped up from the ground, his small face suddenly filled with a layer of nervousness. Her figure flickered as she tried to enter the paradise planet. However, she was repelled by a powerful force. Jojo took a few steps back. His little face instantly turned pale and his heart was in a mess. Chocho, Chocho, where are you? Little ball. In the past, Chocho would respond to her every call. Even when Chocho was in seclusion, she could still feel a faint connection with Chocho. But now, she suddenly realized in a panic that she couldn't feel anything at all. Chocho. Arbor didn't know what to do now. She jumped down from the small stone stool and suddenly summoned the ferrule from her conscious. She held it tightly in her hand and looked around cautiously. Chapter 2884. What was going on? In reality, she could sense that there wasn't any dangerous aura around her. But she couldn't enter her paradise planet. Chocho had also lost contact with her, and Jianjian and Little Pimple had both disappeared. If they weren't being controlled by someone's spiritual pressure, then why? Everyone seemed to have disappeared in an instant, which made her suddenly wonder if Chocho and the others had never existed. Was she dreaming? Impossible. Mo Lien, the little fellow shouted. Duan Yu? Xian. Arbor abruptly turned around and looked at the empty courtyard. When she turned around again, there was still nothing on the pitch-black path. Mo Lien. Arbor called out everyone's names, but no one answered her. This made her feel like she had fallen into an ice cellar, as if she had returned to the past. She had nothing left, boom. She was horrified and abruptly looked up at the pitch-black night sky. There, it was as if countless star fragments were blossoming, and the brilliant fireworks illuminated the entire courtyard in an instant. The little fellow shrank back a step, her eyes still somewhat shaken. The instant she turned around, she saw Mo Lien. The tall and slender figure was standing not far behind her, his gaze fixed on her. Jojo was somewhat absent-minded, and she sprinted toward him. Mo Lien. That figure faintly dispersed, as if what she saw just now was merely a shadow. Mo Lien. Jojo shouted loudly as she ran back and forth in the court. She was so anxious that her forehead was drenched in sweat, and her small face was scrunched up tightly. Under the night sky, those clusters of fireworks were like shattered stars, within reach. After Arbor ran back and forth in the court for a while, she suddenly paused and dazedly looked at the figure standing at the door to her room. It was Mo Lien. It was him. His black hair was loosely tied up and fell behind his back. Her plain white brocade robe was as elegant as snow under the brilliant fireworks. Her features were picturesque, elegant and otherworldly. He stood in the corridor, his eyes as vast as the sea, quietly looking at her. The sparkling fireworks behind him instantly became his background. Sir Jojo shrank his hand, almost as if he did not dare to walk over. Until the man opened his arms and made a gesture of hugging her. Without any hesitation, the little fellow ran over and bumped into her arms without any rhyme or reason. It wasn't until her small hands hugged his warm waist that she realized that the person in front of her wasn't an illusion. Mo Lien, where did you and the others go? Miss Chiao was depressed and a little scared. Just now, she was standing alone at the entrance of the courtyard. That feeling was really uncomfortable. It felt as if the whole world had thrown her away. Mo Lien, where did you run off to? Why is there no one at home? Where is there? The little fellow looked up. When she saw his calm eyes looking at her, her heart inexplicably trembled slightly. What's wrong? Based on the intuition of a small animal, Sir Jojo inexplicably felt that a storm was coming. Did you feel scared just now? Sir Jojo subconsciously nodded his little head. In the next second, he pressed his lips down and ruthlessly crushed them. Sir Jojo hurriedly reached out to push him, but his hands were held back and pushed against the door with great force. Chapter 2885. When I lost everything, I also felt fear and terror. Mo Lien bit down hard on her little mouth and pressed his lips against hers, almost whispering. But I almost lost everything today. Because you were willful and disobedient. Because of you. His voice was so low that it sounded right by her lips. That storm-like kiss from before was like a spring breeze and rain in the end, soft and gentle, making people feel indescribably uncomfortable. Arbor stuttered for the first time. Then he thought about it and felt that this situation was a bit off. You did it on purpose. Jojo finally understood and angrily glared at him with a pair of big, black eyes. Then what about Qiuqiu? You deliberately made Qiuqiu and the rest ignore me. Miss Chiao was so angry that her eyes were a bit red. Just now, when Qiuqiu, Jian, and the others ignored her and she couldn't enter Paradise Planet, she really panicked. Since the first day of her rebirth, Qiuqiu had always been by her side. Her relationship with Qiuqiu wasn't something that could be described simply as master and servant. Master, this time I really didn't want to bother with you. It wasn't the Crown Prince who told me to ignore you, it was me who wanted to cooperate with him. Qiuqiu suddenly said. The little water child in Paradise Planet wanted to go up and cover its mouth, but it was almost too late. Why was this death-seeking child so honest? Couldn't you just push the blame to Prince Mo? Why did you have to admit it yourself? The little dirt lump at the side blinked and nodded repeatedly. Chiu is right, it's right. Little Master should be taught a profound lesson. That's right. We took the initiative to cooperate with His Highness the Crown Prince this time. Miss Chiao's little face was red with anger, and all the hairs on her body stood up. These brats all wanted to rebel, right? Just now, she had called them all, but no one bothered with her. She was really so flustered that she couldn't tell north from south. Mo Lien leaned close to her lips and looked at her calmly. Jojo. You can trust your friends. As he spoke, he stared deeply into her eyes. Arbor's heart trembled slightly. He said stubbornly, I don't distrust you. I don't trust you, friend. Look at me. What do you see now? An angry expression, Jojo answered honestly. What else? You can't hit me. I've already grown up. I can't spank her but, old, anymore. Arbor struggled in his arms. Thinking of this person's past, he suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. That reminds me, Mo Lien said faintly. Arbor was dumbfounded. He quickly reached out and pushed him. I know why you're angry. I didn't do it on purpose. She was just too angry at that time, so she thought that she must use her own ability to kill those men of sacrifice who came to kill her. But you scared me like this today. You're not good either. You also have to apologize to me. Miss Chiao's little face darkened as she nagged, you have to compensate. I still have to compensate. A figure suddenly jumped out from the shadows of the corridor. I told you, this little girl, you can't reason with her at all. I have to beat her up today. Chapter 2886. Master. She saw young Shirong suddenly jump out and dash toward her with a dark expression. Arbor hastily shrank back into Mo Lien's arms and tugged at his sleeve. I can forgive you for scaring me earlier. Persuade Master to return. With Prince Mo's wit and eloquence, he could definitely pacify Master Yang with a few words. When Mo Lien ignored her, Sir Jojo felt that his authority as the little emperor had been severely challenged. She glared at him in a huff and hastily hid behind him. Master, what are you doing? Everyone is watching. She finally realized that Mo Lien and Duan Yu, these two idiots, had used their presences to isolate everyone earlier. In reality, they were all standing in the shadows and watching her frantically run around to call for them. Simply vile. Young Shirong ran to her side and pulled the little fellow out from behind Mo Lien without a second word. Do you know where you were wrong? Sir Jojo really wanted to shake her head, but the situation forced her to, so she could only nod obediently. Speak. Jojo shrunk her neck. I shouldn't have tried to show off. But the path of cultivation is filled with tribulations to begin with. You must grow and mature in battle. The more the little fellow spoke, the more fluent she became. How can a flower in a greenhouse grow? I didn't do it on purpose. However, when she saw young Shirong's face turn darker and darker toward the end, she quietly lowered her voice. That's quite reasonable. Dao Wuji couldn't help but chuckle as he ran out to stir up trouble. It's not that Master doesn't want you to grow. But you also have to look at the situation. If you fought one-on-one, Master has nothing to say. But you clearly saw so many kamikaze warriors besieging you. 2 fists are no match for 4 hands, so why didn't you call for help? Peach Blossom clearly wanted to help you, so why did you have to stop her? A certain venerable immortal called Peach Blossom looked at Master Yang in bewilderment. Master, I've emphasized to you many times that I'm not called Peach Blossom, I'm called Shirchen. Also, Peony and Ginkgo, why didn't you ask them to come out and help? You've already been beaten up by the crowd, yet you're still trying to show off. Is this the way of cultivation you speak of? The two sisters, Peony and Ginkgo, looked at each other silently before looking at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal with sympathy. Jojo's martial uncle had categorized the Peach Blossoms into the ranks of the sisters. Peach Blossom, Peony, Ginkgo, these were all very normal titles. Why did it sound like a brothel in Martial Uncle's mouth? Damn! You weren't fighting with anyone at all. You were being one-sidedly ganged up on. Duan, you've said irritably. Jojo, ask yourself honestly. Was it purely because you didn't want us to help? Yuan Shichen sighed. No. You don't remember us at all. Xiao Mu's heart sank with a thump. At that time, when Qiuqiu called you, you blurted out the words to stop it. Do you know the reason? Yuan Shichen gazed deeply at her. You weren't conversing with Qiuqiu at all. No. Arbor shuddered and reflexively refuted Yuan Shichen. You had already entered a demonic state at that time, so you didn't remember us at all. We could have helped you. So they punished her and made her experience what it was like to have no friends or family. They wanted her to firmly remember today. Chapter 2887. The reason why she had rejected Qiuqiu so quickly was just as he Shichen had said. That was because she was talking to herself and not Qiuqiu. That sentence, "Don't let anyone help me," was the best description of her thoughts at that time. She didn't need anyone's help, she didn't need anyone's help. Even if she was alone, she could solve everything. Jojo, you're no longer alone. Yang Shirong reached out and smoothed her hair, a trace of affection in her eyes. Seeing that you're the birthday girl today, I'll remember this beating for now. If you do it again, I'll beat you up too. Qi Xianxian, who was at the side, couldn't help but rush forward and hug her tightly. She reached out and lightly punched her shoulder. Jojo, no matter what happens in the future, remember that I'll always be there for you. Happy 16th birthday. Arbor was stunned. She didn't remember that today was her birthday at all. No wonder when she left the royal school, Mo Lien had repeatedly told her that she must come back today. She turned her head to look at him, only to see him looking at her calmly. His eyes seemed to be emotionless, but it was because of him that the little fellow couldn't help but shrink her neck. This was really an unforgettable birthday party. She had been hunted down in the afternoon and had finally managed to kill them back. When she returned to the royal school, she had been given a solid shock. Now, although everyone had handed over their compensation, gifts, the little fellow was still a little shaken. Although there was still a trace of fear in her heart, she was more happy than happy. The feeling of regaining something that she had lost made her a little confused. She felt that after staying in the crowd for so long, she didn't want to go back to the cold castle surrounded by high walls. Mo Lien didn't say much, only silently accompanying her by her side. They accompanied her to distribute the cakes and eat until late at night. Only then did everyone return to their rooms to rest. The little fellow was a little worried. Seeing that everyone had left, she pretended to be tired and raised her hand to yawn. I'm going to sleep too. She walked towards her room, but just as she was about to enter the room, she bumped into the man with a bang. What are you doing? The little emperor baby couldn't help but shout. I've tolerated you all night. He had remained silent and expressionless all this time, following by her side. Could it be that he was influenced by the company he kept, and wanted to be the second expressionless face? Bah 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 bah. How could she say that she had facial paralysis? Arbor moved to the side and said angrily, "Today is my birthday." What do you want? She hadn't even settled the score with him for colluding with so many people to scare her. At this moment, he still dared to provoke the little emperor. He simply did not want to be treated well. I'm not done yet. Arbor was dumbfounded. He couldn't keep up with his train of thought. What did you say? Mo Lien grabbed her little hand and directly dragged her into the side room. With a bang, the door of the side room was closed. Speak. What if she couldn't keep up with his pace at all? The little stoic was quite anxious on the inside. Why did he feel that there was something wrong with Mo Lien today? She felt some regret in her heart. She was also aware that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's words weren't without reason. When she was surrounded and attacked, the only thing on her mind was how to counterattack. She really didn't think of relying on other people's strength to counterattack. Don't wait for me, I'll say it's over when I'm done. Chapter 2888. Why aren't you saying anything? When she came back to her senses, she saw Mo Lien, this guy, pulling her into his embrace as he nuzzled his head back and forth on her fair and slender neck. Arbor looked at him blankly. She really didn't know what he wanted her to say. You have a bad memory. Mo Lien reached out to knock her head. Look at me, what did you see? An angry face. Miss Chiao answered honestly. Although he was quite handsome, his face was expressionless. One look and one could tell that under that calm exterior, there was a raging heart. Something's wrong. Worried? Arbor tried to say these two words, then raised her hand to support her forehead. Closing her eyes, she said, dizzy, head. Mo Lien carried her up without another word, and walked slowly towards the brocade couch at the side. What did you see? There was no light in the room at all, and it was completely dark. She wanted to ask, what could she see? There wasn't even the slightest bit of moonlight outside. Fortunately, her eyesight was outstanding. Even if it was pitch black, she could still make out his face with difficulty. The little fellow reached out to cup his face, and looked at him with a serious expression. Mo Lien, I was wrong this time. I won't do it again. But you weren't right either. You colluded with so many people to scare me. Until now, I'm still so scared that my heart keeps beating. Later, she would definitely settle the score with that little ball. It was simply too much. She didn't even want to think about how panicked she was when little ball didn't respond even when she called for it. What did you see? You only know how to say this one sentence. Sir Jojo was furious, but he couldn't vent his anger. Her little hand pinched his icy face hard, and she said seriously, I saw your panic and fear. Prince Mo nodded his head and reached out to pull her into his embrace. They sat on the bed together and he hugged her tightly without saying a word. The room was silent for a long time. Zhe Chen told me that when you fought against the self-detonation of the two men of sacrifice, my feelings were just as you said. I was panicked and scared. Even despair. Things are different now. He suddenly lowered his head and looked at her seriously. There are many things that you don't have to face alone. You need to grow, but don't disregard your own life. Even if in the future, in the face of a strong enemy who is much stronger than you will have to think of other ways to deal with them appropriately. It doesn't mean that you are weak. Jojo. He pressed his forehead against hers, his eyes fixed on her. I'm more scared than I've ever been. Because you don't cherish yourself. Arbor reflected for a moment and held his hand. It won't happen again. Prince Mo raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Really? Sir Jojo promised, but immediately felt that he was terrified and was a little unconvinced. Humph. You're not good today either. You even persuaded Marshal Uncle to come and scare me. I'm already so scared. Naturally, I want to get back at you. Mo Lien said indifferently. The little fellow almost jumped up from the bed when she saw that he dared to provoke her little emperor's dignity. He held her down with one hand and kept her in his arms. Sir Jojo rolled his eyes at him. He stretched out his hand in front of her and suddenly opened his palm, revealing a bright chain in his palm. The most special thing was that the pendant was a pentagram. Chapter 2891. Chen Qi and Lu Zheng, the two of you go to a nearby town today and buy more rice, vegetables, and all kinds of daily necessities for the Xuanji sect. Prepare everything before we head to Rosy Cloud's Peak tomorrow. Bring them up as well. Since we still have to find the 101 first-generation disciples in the future, prepare what needs to be prepared first. After saying this, Arbor swaggered off with Mo Lien and the others, leaving behind two glaring old men. What was going on? They originally wanted to take the opportunity to tease their second-generation sect master, but it seemed like they freaking dug a hole and completely buried themselves. Chen Qi thumped his chest and stamped his feet. His heavenly horsetail feather. Lu Zheng's face was also green. My mechanism map. He spent so many years crafting it, but in the end, he completely ruined his treasure. What should he do? He really wanted to cry. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. Moreover, they were first-generation elders of the sect. Going out to make large purchases like oil, salt, sauces, vinegar, tea, and the like. Shouldn't this be the chores of the sect's miscellaneous disciples? Why did they have to complete it as two great elders? Were they sure the second-generation sect master wasn't pranking them two old brothers? The two of them miserably returned to their rooms and prepared to set off. Not mentioning how the two old men went out to purchase food while feeling aggrieved, Arbor and his group of companions cheerfully headed toward the cultivation hall after bidding farewell to Duan Yu and Mo Lien. The cultivation hall was located on the north side of the learning area. It was quite a distance away from the forging and concealed weapons halls on the south side. Strictly speaking, this was Xiao Mu's first time going to the cultivation hall for lessons after entering the school. Moreover, she had to ask for leave from the tutor on her first day. The little fellow rubbed her chin. How are the students getting along? Lu Yu revealed an indescribable expression for her to see. Arbor glanced at him before turning back to look at the little fatty. What's wrong? You couldn't have been bullied, right? Those seniors in the cultivation hall really aren't very friendly, the little fatty said while pursing his lips. When we study in the cultivation hall, old students and new students mix together. Although everyone more or less knows a little about the theoretical knowledge, when it comes to the actual combat class, the freshmen are always beaten up and the instructors can only pretend not to see it. Speaking of this, Qi Xianxian was filled with anger. Yesterday, I saw a senior bully a girl until she cried. He even forced her to hand over half of her contribution points. Qi Xianxian said angrily. What contribution points? Xiao Mu hadn't gone to class for a day, but why did it feel like a century had passed? She felt confused about everything she heard. Hey, you still don't know, right? Qi Xianxian continued to nag at her. These contribution points are mainly used to purchase various resources. It's on the east side of the academy's residential area, on a contribution street. It said that the things there are quite good. Since you don't need to spend your own spirit stones, spirit coins are very useful. Xiao Mu gave an "oh" and nodded. Why aren't you curious about where the contribution points come from? Xiao Mu blinked and said in all seriousness, why should I be curious about this thing? I don't lack supplies. Everyone was instantly speechless. Why do I feel like I can't continue chatting with her? Qi Xianxian turned to look at Lu Yu and the others in a daze. The latter shrugged and joked with a smile, looks like you're not the only one who feels this way. Hey, let me tell you, Jojo. After we enter the academy, every new student will be given 10,000 contribution points. Chapter 2892. I only heard Headmaster Yun say that you can obtain mission points by accepting missions at the mission center. MHM, that's different. Points are of a higher level. Also, it's very hard to earn. Qi Xianxian seemed to want to pour out all her grievances from these 2 days on the little stoic. Reportedly, you can only obtain 10 to 50 points after completing a level 1 mission. Qi Xianxian huffed. For example, a level 1 mission is to help the Academy's medicinal garden by weeding, watering, and so on. This type of mission is usually claimed by those who have connections all year round. Oh. You're not angry at all. Qi Xianxian widened her round eyes. I heard them say that you have to gather 5,000 points before you can step into Huang Baolu. How long will it take to gather all of these 10 points? A level 2 mission is mainly to hunt a level 15 mystic beast called Ice Thread Rabbit in north-facing Great Forest. The main reason is that this Ice Thread Rabbit's fur is quite precious. It's used to weave fur collars and gloves, and it's very popular with many noble ladies and misses. Missions above level 3 require you to kill spirit beasts. Qi Xianxian felt like she was spewing out her grievances when she talked about this. I'm not talking to you about points right now. I'm talking about contribution points. Qi Xianxian stretched out her hand and poked her little head. These are contribution points. Everyone will be given 10,000 contribution points when they enter the academy. The only way to earn contribution points is through battle. Qi Xuanxuan's spittle splattered everywhere as the little stoic expressionlessly glanced at her. Moreover, it said that pitiful worms with less than 300 contribution points will be thrown into north-facing Great Forest by themselves to train for a month. They can only return to the academy after killing 30 spirit beasts. Our dear Qi Xianxian shook her small body. She couldn't help but shiver when she thought about the possibility of being thrown into a desolate place like the north-facing Great Forest to train for a month. There was no one around, and she had to kill spirit beasts all by herself. Arbor thought that this person might have persecutory delusions. She swept her a glance and brusquely pushed away the small face that was close to her. You're thinking too much. Because contribution points can only be earned through battle. That's why those seniors are so disgusting and always challenge us freshmen. There are also some who are even worse. They used bets to cheat us of our contribution points. You've been deceived. Arbor immediately turned to look at Qi Xianxian and the rest. No. The little fatty hurriedly shook his head. Xianxian was almost cheated out of 100 contribution points by them, but in the end, seeing that we were unwilling to tolerate it, they had no choice but to not completely fall out with us. That bastard called Zhong he lied to me and said that if I invested 100 contribution points, I would get 200 contribution points tomorrow. You're making me dizzy. Thinking about the 2 wisps of mustache from yesterday, Xianxian jumped up again. Those older students are really bad. If we're not careful, they'll set us up. In short, we have to guard against them. As they spoke, the few of them had already arrived outside the white fence outside the cultivation hall. Looking over, they could see quite a number of people gathered there, making a ruckus. Each and every one of them was filled with righteous indignation. What's going on? What's going on? Ah! Qi Xianxian hastily ran over and pulled on a familiar little girl, asking, Hua, what happened? Why aren't you guys going in? Chapter 2893. That bastard Huang Qishan is up to something again. The girl called Hua, who was about the same age as Xianxian, angrily puffed up her face and shouted, he set up a table at the entrance. It's fine to say that he wants to enter the cultivation hall, but he wants to challenge and win against the 10 seniors. The loser will have to transfer 1,000 contribution points to them. What? Qi Xianxian angrily scolded with her hands on her hips. She felt hot blood rushing to her head. Has this Huang Qishan gone crazy thinking about contribution points? Isn't that so? I heard that he has his eyes set on a heaven-grade longevity pill on the contribution street and it costs 10,000 contribution points to buy it. He only has 3,000 contribution points with him now, he's definitely thinking of ways to take it from us. Qi Xianxian hurriedly took a step back and muttered with a stingy face, I definitely can't give my contribution points to him. After such a long time, the cultivation hall's teachers still haven't come out. They definitely know about this and are hiding in the dark to observe us. Those teachers were also very unreliable. Usually, when they saw the seniors bullying the freshmen, they would turn a blind eye to this kind of situation. They didn't treat the freshmen seriously at all. Arbor silently took 2 steps back from the crowd. Actually, she didn't care about contribution points at all. She didn't even care about those high-grade contribution points. Today, she was only here to take a small break, but she couldn't even enter the cultivation hall's main door. The cultivation hall's contribution points ranking is out. Someone shouted excitedly and everyone ran towards the entrance. Through the white fence, one could see a black crystal tablet erected at the entrance of the cultivation hall. On top of it, there were water ripples and rows of names appeared. The cultivation hall was the majority of the Imperial School students and there were more than 8,000 of them. As a result, more than 8,000 names were densely packed together on a black crystal tablet. It was impossible to see them clearly. Do you see me? How many contribution points do I have? We're all freshmen, so our rankings should be quite high. I see it at the front, 10,000. Everyone was talking at the same time when someone shouted, "Hey, quickly look, who's in the first place?" There are actually 30,000 contribution points. A group of older students who had heard the commotion also walked over. Separated by the white wooden fence, they stood in front of the black crystal tablet and looked at the name engraved on the tablet with complicated expressions. Wow, are my eyes playing tricks on me? The first place will get 30,000 contribution points. Let me see, let me see. Qi Xian hurriedly squeezed her way forward. Her eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets when she saw what was on the screen. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, Jojo, quick, quick, come and take a look. You're rich, rich, rich. What the hell is this? There's a XIN behind her name. Isn't she a new student like us? How did this new student get 30,000 contribution points the moment he entered the academy? Could it be that he miscalculated and gave me too much? You're the one who's wrong. Your whole family is wrong." Qi Xian turned around and glared at the young man. She squeezed out of the crowd and grabbed Jojo's hand. "Jojo. You're rich. You have 30,000 contribution points. What's the use?" Arbor was expressionless. "It can be exchanged." Qi Xian suddenly felt that she couldn't continue. "That's right, what's the use of keeping it with Jojo, Happy New Year." She had to wait, there were still 3 more chapters to go. It was really the end of the year. Chapter 2894. The little fatty rubbed his nose. "I'm just curious. Who on earth transferred so many contribution points to Qiao Qiao? Does that even need to be said?" Qi Xian rolled her eyes at him. "It must be His Highness the Crown Prince and His Highness Romley." "I guessed it." Arbor's mouth twitched. At the same time, Duan Yu and Mo Yen, who were also admiring the contribution points ranking on their own branch's black crystal tablet, were surrounded by many people. How can His Highness the Crown Prince, Prince Chen, have 0 points? There must be something wrong with this thing. They probably didn't accumulate enough contribution points for His Highness to enroll in the school. This is too deceptive. Don't worry, Your Highness. Let's each donate some points to increase His Highness's contribution points. Right, right. I approve. Mo Yen and Duan Yu, what happened? Why did so many people in the branch eagerly step forward to donate points to him? I'll donate 300. 500, I'll donate 500. Your Highness, I'm called Zhou Sheng, I'll donate 1,000. Your Highness, I'm called Wang Gui is me. I'll donate 2,000. Duan Yu looked at the girl called Wang Gui and winked at him. He felt a bit uncomfortable soon. The 2 people's contribution points ranking in the forging branch and concealed weapons branch shot up in a straight line. Arbor didn't know about these 2 episodes, but she found it a bit funny. Those 2 people were baffled. Why did they give her all these contribution points? Qi Xianxian chuckled and said, "They must be making you buy some good food." Arbor was expressionless. "I'm not a foodie." The group of senior students who were separated by the white fence were looking at them with complicated expressions. "Hey, who is Arbor at the top of the contribution points ranking? Come out and let brother take a look." Huan Qishan couldn't go up to stop his brother and saw his brother, Su Fugue, boldly standing at the fence entrance and speaking with a chuckle. "Who are you calling big brother?" Qi Xianxian slammed her hand on the gate, but she was repelled by a force. The gate had been covered by the spiritual pressure of a level 11 spirit master. It was really hard to break in like this. Arbor hurried forward to support her. His dark eyes looked at Su Fugue. "What's your name?" Su Fugue inexplicably shuddered. He only felt that when the little girl's pair of icy bead-like eyes coldly looked at him, it was rather frightening. "Open the door obediently," Arbor said coldly. "Take your lackeys and crawl away." Huan Qishan did not expect that Arbor would really come to the cultivation hall for lessons. Wasn't she the crown princess of the divine land? These people from the upper echelons of society came here just so that they could tell others that they had graduated from the royal school and earned some credits. How could they really come here to attend classes so early in the morning? He still remembered how the crown princess had insulted him. Su Fugue didn't understand the situation, so he better not implicate his brother. Open the door." Huan Qishan kicked his brother's butt. The latter was baffled, and she moved to the door in bewilderment before glancing at Xiaomu again. "Hurry and open it." Su Fugue's hand trembled when Huan Qishan shouted, and he hastily withdrew all of the spiritual pressure on the gate. He opened the door and looked at the little stoic leading the way. Boring. Arbor swept them a glance and walked straight to the instructor's resting area. When everyone saw this, they silently lit a candle in their hearts. Chapter 2895. Of course, there were also those who did not understand the situation. They tugged at the sleeves of the people beside them and inquired about Arbor's background. "Close the door," Huan Qishan ordered. Su Fugue was about to make a move. Arbor turned around and coldly stared at them. "What are you doing?" Huan Qishan was stunned. He smiled and said, "Crown Princess, we want to have a friendly match with the freshmen. We hope that you won't stop us." "What kind of friendly match is this? You're just eyeing the contribution points in our pockets. You're thinking of ways to cheat us." Qi Xianxian pointed out bluntly. "Preposterous." Huan Qishan glared at Qi Xianxian. "Line up outside. Same rules, if you want to enter, you have to defeat 10 seniors." Arbor retreated and stood in front of one of the seniors. She looked at the other party with a wooden face. "I'll challenge you." That senior shook his head like a rattledrum. "You can't do that, Crown Princess." What kind of joke was this? This Crown Princess had a huge existence like Sand Scorpion by her side. Him challenging her? Unless his brain was flooded with water. "You're a golden branch in jade leaf, we don't dare to challenge you," the man said flatteringly as he took 2 steps back. "I don't summon spiritual beasts." Arbor looked at him indifferently. "If you can take 3 moves from me, I won't interfere in today's matter. If you can't even take 3 moves, transfer all your contribution points to me." Everyone was dumbstruck. They felt that the scene in front of them was changing rapidly. The plot was changing so fast that it was impossible to guard against it. That person still shook his head like a rattledrum and took a few steps back. No need, Crown Princess." He had a special premonition. Since the little Crown Princess dared to say such words, she must have a card up her sleeve. He would not go up and look for a beating. He had to admit that this brother's 6th sense was very accurate. After retreating a few steps, he hurriedly turned around and retreated to the side, no longer standing among the 10 senior students who were being challenged. Huang Qishan glanced at him coldly but did not say anything. After all, even he didn't dare to challenge this person, let alone the other students. Open the door. She did not care about the others. She knew that Xian and the others could not be stopped outside. Su Fugue obediently opened the white fence and glared at the snickering crowd. Why are you all blocking the entrance? Move aside, move aside, move aside. Not long after Arbor arrived at the teacher's office, Ali and his men forcibly opened up a path in the crowd for Akir and Mayas to pass through. When Instructor Ma and Instructor Gao of the Cultivation Hall saw that Arbor had come to ask for leave on the first day of class, their faces unknowingly tensed up. Applying for leave will result in a deduction of 500 contribution points per day. Have you thought about it? Isn't it 50? Arbor pointed at the regulations hanging behind the teachers and said calmly. Instructor Gao, who had been slapped in the face on the spot, calmly raised his hand and rubbed his nose. That's for other people. You are a classmate with an unusual status. If you ask for leave, it must be 500. You're too much of a scam. Although Xiao Mu did not have much desire for contribution points, she was not a sucker. How could she allow someone to deduct 500 points so casually? She was unhappy, and her thin brows knitted together. You should follow the regulations. Not a single point more. Chapter 2896. Instructor Gao's thick brows arched as he said in displeasure, "You're ranked first in terms of contribution points right now. I originally wanted to arrange for you to talk about your cultivation experiences with the students tomorrow. Now that you're taking leave like this, how am I supposed to arrange my work, huh?" On the side, Instructor Ma's mouth twitched as he frantically winked at Instructor Gao. Instructor Gao looked at him speechlessly. What are you doing? Are your eyes uncomfortable? To hell with your uncomfortable eyes. Instructor Ma glanced at Instructor Gao in disdain. He wanted to remind him. On the first day of school, this little stoic did something so out of line. Hadn't it only been 2 days? Why did he want the stoic face to talk about her learning experiences again? There was simply no hope for her to talk about anything with this stoic face of hers. I don't have any cultivation experiences. The little stoic glanced at the 2 instructors indifferently. But I can spar with the students one-on-one. If they're willing. No one would be willing, right? Instructor Ma was speechless and secretly rolled his eyes. All right then, I'll ask them tomorrow. Teacher Gao reached out and stamped her leave request. 500 contribution points will be deducted for a day. Deduct 1,000 points for more than 7 days. Bam! The little stoic slammed the 2 instructors' door shut. She was still fuming when she walked out, her small face brimming with indignation. They were simply too heartless. Wasn't it just asking for leave? They actually had to deduct contribution points. No wonder these students were all so tight on their days. Contribution points were truly earned at a snail's pace and consumed very quickly. When Qi Xianxian and the others saw her walk out of the instructor's office in a huff, they quickly went up to her and asked, "Jojo, why are you so angry? What happened?" "It's nothing." She pulled a long face and couldn't resist saying, "The instructors are all too stingy." Qi Xianxian stifled her laughter. "They made things difficult for you?" Arbor harumphed. "If Su Fugue and the others stop you from entering in the future, release your spirit beasts and let them bite you however you like." A tall black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. Arbor looked up, and the concerned expression on his little face instantly turned cold. "Get out of the way. Qiao Qiao, I have an important matter that I want to discuss with you in private." Ming Yasi stood ramrod straight in front of Qiao Mu with an unyielding attitude. The little stoic was a bit angry at once, and she pulled Qi Xianxian back a step. "Jojo. Ming Yas reached out to grab her wrist. Arbor retracted his hand and flipped it over. His wrist brushed past the back of his hand as if it was boneless, and he quickly retracted it back into his sleeve. Arbor glared angrily at Nayas in front of him and shouted angrily, "Get out of the way. What do I have to say to you?" Ming Yas didn't get angry. He just looked at her indifferently and said, "It's about the marriage contract from 20 years ago. I'm sure you'll be interested to know." "What marriage contract from 20 years ago?" Arbor was puzzled. "Come with me." "Jojo, don't go with him." Qi Xianxian grabbed Arbor's arm and stared guardedly at Ming Yas as he turned around and left. "This guy is tricking you." "Humph, of course I won't go with him." Arbor threw him a cold glance. However, the result of ignoring him was that a marriage contract was posted in front of the dining hall's entrance at noon. The end of the 6th night watch. Broken sleep. Chapter 2897. At first, Arbor didn't know that Ming Yas had done such a good deed at the cafeteria. By the time Qi Xianxian, and the others went over to eat, there was already a large crowd at the entrance of the cafeteria. They were gathered in twos and threes, pointing and watching. Seeing Arbor walk over, these people shut their mouths and winked at her with mocking smiles. Arbor was quite baffled. When she went up and saw the marriage contract, she was about to explode in anger. Most importantly, there was a small note floating below the marriage contract. Our dear Qiao Mu's name was impressively written on it. Lu Yu and the others were startled and turned to look at Arbor in unison. "Jojo, what's going on?" "Crazy." Arbor clenched her small fists and tore down the marriage contract and small note. She asked a snickering male student, "Where is Ming Yas?" The male student shrunk his neck and cautiously pointed to the second floor of the cafeteria. Arbor leaped up with a whoosh and directly jumped over the railing on the second floor. She couldn't control the anger that wanted to erupt from her entire body. Like a little lion, the little guy rushed to the door of a private room and kicked the door of the private room flying with a bang. A man in tiger skin suddenly jumped to the middle of the room and shouted in a low voice. Then, he grabbed a stool and smashed it at the door. When the two collided, wood splinters flew everywhere. A watercolored light curtain appeared in the middle, blocking all the wood shavings outside and not contaminating their bodies. Akir immediately jumped up from the stool and glared at Arbor, who had barged in with her beautiful eyes. She shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Anger flashed in Akir's eyes, and she casually threw a dirt ball straight at Arbor's face. "Akir, stop," Yas shouted coldly. But Akir already couldn't stop. She had thrown the dirt ball, so there was no reason to take it back. That earthen ball smashed towards Qiao Mu's face at an extremely rapid speed. Miss Qiao's expression was abnormally cold and severe. She grasped a circle of water spirit energy in one hand, and the bright, watery spirit energy suddenly enveloped the dirt ball that Akir had thrown. It was as if the earth ball was covered by a transparent water spirit barrier, and the earth ball was completely under the palm of his hand. This kind of water spirit control stunned Akir, and she couldn't help but feel a bit frightened. She had a bad feeling. "Akir, get out of the way!" Ali shouted in alarm. In the blink of an eye, the dirt ball that Akir had thrown was fiercely thrown back at Akir's face. Ah! Akir was so scared that she was as dumb as a wooden chicken. She even forgot to move her feet. She stood upright in the middle of the room and was about to be hit by the dirt ball. A black shadow quickly came to her side, grabbed her collar, and threw her to the side of a stool. Bang! Akir's butt landed heavily on the stool. She howled in pain and grimaced as she looked at Yas. Yas appeared where she had been standing and controlled the dirt ball that Arbor had thrown back with one hand. The dirt ball appeared very smooth and obedient in his hand. It spun around between his slender fingers, and the spirit energy slowly dispersed and was absorbed by his fingers. The man pursed his thin lips tightly and stared fixedly at the little girl in front of him with hawk-like eyes. What a ruthless heart. Chapter 2898. Just now, if he hadn't helped in time, would Akir have been able to keep her life? That was definitely not possible. Akir was merely a level 7 spiritualist who relied on a pile of medicine. She had no chance of winning against the little girl. Moreover, Akir had relied on heavenly earth mithril to barely comprehend the origin of the earth spirit. Her talent naturally couldn't compare to even one of the little girl's fingers. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. This little girl was still so ruthless. She threw dirt balls at people's heads without saying a word. She was clearly aiming to take their lives. Arbor coldly looked at the man with pursed lips in front of her and threw the tattered marriage contract at him. What is this? Why did you say that? Ming Yasi looked at her with a spurious smile. In the morning, I said I wanted to talk to you. So her rejection was met with such harsh treatment. She wasn't a cat or a dog. Why did she have to be present and listen to his nonsense when he said he wanted to talk? Arbor angrily glared at him with her almond-shaped eyes and coldly looked at him. You're courting death. How dare you? Akir sat up straight on the stool and glared at Arbor with red eyes. You're too impudent, Arbor. Shut up. Arbor and Ming Yasi turned around and shouted at her at the same time. Akir looked at the two in shock. It was bad enough that this damned woman Arbor shouted at her, but now even His Highness Yasi was shouting at her like this. Akir felt that her life was very miserable and couldn't help but sob while covering her face. Take Akir out. Ming Yasi pursed his lips, anger and irritation flashing through his hawk-like eyes. Waving his hand, he turned around and ordered Ali, you guys go out too. What a sin. Ali glanced at his elder brother and couldn't help but sigh. He stepped forward and pulled Akir up. Let's go, Akir. No, I'm not going out. Don't pull me out. Akir twisted her waist and shouted in exasperation, this woman must have cast some kind of goo on His Highness Yasi. Otherwise, how could this woman gain His Highness Yasi's favor with such a vile attitude? This was completely impossible. The only thing Akir could think of was the goo poison technique used by the people of the primal land. Get out. ACI roared again impatiently. He hadn't expected Arbor to arrive so quickly. If he had known, he wouldn't have let the meddlesome Akir stay here and ruin things. Akir, let's go. Ali helplessly pulled up the writhing Akir and secretly gave her a warning glare. He lowered his voice and said, do you want the crown prince to be angry, drive you far away, and never allow you to return? Akir was instantly speechless. She turned her head and glared fiercely at Arbor before reluctantly following Ali out. However, she wasn't willing to go far. She went to the opposite room and chased the students out. She opened the door and stared at Yas and Arbor. In any case, the door to His Highness Yasa's room had been completely destroyed by Arbor. Now that they were sitting opposite, they could see everything clearly. Your explanation, Arbor said bluntly with a cold expression. Yas raised his hand, and a defensive barrier appeared around the two of them, completely isolating them from the outside world. Seeing this, Akir was so angry that she jumped up and scolded with a sour expression, what do they want to do by hiding in the room?